The Brightest Tomorrow. River City Sweethearts. Written by Susan Hatler. Narrated by Virtual Voice.
Chapter 1. It took me 8 years to graduate from college. Now, at 27, I just realized I'd picked the wrong major. Kind of a painful revelation, since I have a gazillion student loans draining my checking account every month. My parents had assured me that a business degree would open up a wide range of job opportunities. And they were right. Plus, I couldn't hope to work for a better employer than Woodward Systems Corporation. They had hired me as a receptionist, promoted me within months, and treated me with all the respect an office manager could ever want. If only I weren't bored out of my mind. I glanced around my office, which I'd decorated with fervor. Bright colors. Personal photo collages. I'd even painted the artwork myself. Decorating my office had been my favorite part of the job. Not a good sign for my future. My gaze drifted to the framed abstract watercolor painting I'd made in my evening art class. I'd originally signed up to be an art major at my local junior college here in Sacramento. But my parents had told me that wasn't practical and had encouraged me to switch to business. By encouraged, I mean that they'd ragged on me until I finally gave in and switched majors. Big mistake. I dropped my chin on my fist, turned toward my computer screen, and my eyes blurred as I tried to concentrate on the office supplies order I'd been putting together online. Pens. Staples. Copy paper. Ho-hum. The phone on my desk rang and, call me a dreamer, but I couldn't help wondering if the universe was throwing me a bone. Maybe it was a headhunter who was looking for a decorator with no applicable degree and no practical experience. Yeah, not near the realm of likely. With a sigh, I lifted the receiver to my ear. Hello. Hi. Is this Ginger? A male voice asked. Tingles rolled through me as Greg Shaffer's handsome face popped into my head. Almond brown eyes. Sandy brown hair. And an easy smile that made me go boneless. I'd met Greg a month ago while at a dance club. He and I had clicked immediately, and the sizzle between us had been hot. Then I'd found out what he did for a living. Emergency room doctor. My dad had been an ER doc, and the stress of the job had turned him into a raging alcoholic. Plus, his demanding career had left him zero time for his kids. Not going down that road, thank you very much. Luckily, Greg lived in San Diego, so I told him I wasn't into long-distance relationships. Was he in town? If so, how did he get my work number? Yes. This is Ginger. My dad loved two things, Gilligan's Island and Scotch. The TV show came first, which my mom found so adorable, she'd agreed to name me Ginger and my little sister Mary Ann. But the Scotch? Not so amusing. It was a wonder they were still married. Who is this? I'm not sure if you remember me. Greg's easy smile flashed in my mind, giving me the strong urge to forget that he wanted a big family, and that I didn't want the responsibility of kids. I contemplated hanging up the phone. This is Bob Seaver. I work with Jill Parnell over here at Founding Friendships. You donated your decorating services for our charity auction this Friday? Bob? Not Greg. I squeezed my eyes shut as both relief and disappointment flooded through me. My good friend Jill had recently started Founding Friendships, a homeless outreach program, which provided food, shelter, counseling, job training, etc., to help homeless people get back on their feet. How are things going with the auction? Better than we could have imagined. His voice bellowed enthusiasm. This is Founding Friendships' first big fundraiser, and we've received over 400 pre-purchased tickets already. That's incredible. Not that their success surprised me. Jill Parnell excelled at everything she did. Unlike me, who hadn't even had the guts to take the major I'd wanted. Sigh. It's definitely a collaborative effort, and we really appreciate your contribution." He paused. "In that regard, I'm putting together a booklet of the auction items, and I'm wondering if you have a website you'd like me to include for your business." My brows came together. "My business?" "Yes. Up to date? Says here you're donating your decorating services to bring the winners home up to date. First consultation to be scheduled with the winner immediately." His monotone voice made it sound like he was reading off the description Jill had given to him and made up herself. "I figured you'd want to include your website for advertising." Decorating had always been a hobby of mine, and Jill had prodded me to offer my services after a recent barbecue I'd hosted at my condo. She'd raved over my decor and couldn't believe I'd done it all myself. For the auction, she'd apparently dubbed my non-existent business Up to Date. I don't have a website." "All right. Just thought I'd check." His voice drawled out as if he were writing something down. "Thanks again for donating to the auction. I'll see you Friday night." "See you then." I hung up the phone and twisted my long dark hair around my finger, ideas percolating in my brain. I closed my eyes and imagined myself in a career where I could throw my creativity into my work every day. Colors and fabrics danced through my head. Splashes of paint on canvas. Complete and total heaven. The phone on my desk beeped, yanking me out of the happy daydream. "Ginger?" I recognized Caitlin's voice immediately. She was the human resources manager at Woodward Systems Corporation and also a good friend. I picked up the handset. "What's up?" "Something's brewing with Rich Woodward, and he's adamant about cutting costs in all departments ASAP." Her voice sounded strained. "I need you to find a more economical janitorial staff for our company." The spot right between my brows started to throb. Searching for a cheaper janitorial service sounded about as stimulating as refilling the ink cartridge in my printer. "No problem. I'll get right on it." "Thanks." She blew out a breath. On another note, Paul and I are going to dinner before Jill's auction Friday night, and he has a friend who's single. "Want to double date?" I blinked. Dating had been the last thing on my mind. Unfortunately, my track record with men ranked right there with my career choice, aka depressing. But I shouldn't judge the entire male species based on Victor. Or Tyler. Or Anthony. "Ginger?" "I'm here." I looped my dark hair around my finger. "Just trying to decide if I'm ready to endure the pain. I mean, date again." Caitlin burst out laughing. "Stop overanalyzing and say yes. Trenton Davis is very nice. We'll make a reservation for 6 o'clock. Bye." "Trenton is the capital of New Jersey," I said, but she'd already hung up. I placed the phone back in its cradle, wondering what Trenton, the guy, not the town, would be like, and if he'd possibly be a fun date. Without warning, almond brown eyes once again appeared in my mind, followed by an easy smile that belonged on a front porch swing. I shook my head, then swiveled in my chair and clicked my mouse to pull up a search engine. Even though my career didn't require a shred of creativity, it paid the bills. So I had a job to do: locate a budget-friendly janitorial service. I didn't have time to waste thinking about a non-existent decorating business or some guy I'd met on a dance floor a month ago. I needed to forget pipe dreams of an exciting career and forget Greg Shaffer. Thank goodness he was far away in San Diego. It's not like I'd ever see him again. I pumped my arms as I jogged along the sidewalk, mesmerized by the fading deep red colors from the last of the sunset. The lights from the lampposts flickered on, illuminating my path. My mind had cleared 2 miles back, and all I felt was the soothing rhythmic pounding of my feet against the ground as I inhaled and exhaled the warm evening air. Running was my happy escape. My condo complex came into view, and I slowed my pace to a walk. Sweat trickled down my temples and behind my ears. I swiped my forehead with the back of my hand as I approached the for sale post for my upstairs neighbor's condo. A giant sold sign now hung beneath the realtor's ad. Interesting. The young guy who'd been renting the unit above me stomped around on footsteps resembling a cattle stampede. He also threw way too many loud parties to suit my quiet lifestyle. When the condo had gone on the market as a short sale, I made my friends send a message to the universe to give me a quiet neighbor. Hey, couldn't hurt. I pulled the key for my rental unit out of the pouch on my shoe and inserted it into the lock, which didn't click as I turned it. This told me my irresponsible sister and roommate had beaten me home. 26 years old, and she couldn't be bothered with the responsibility of locking our front door. Mary Ann? Unfortunately, the booming beat spewing from our living room speakers drowned out my voice as I walked in and kicked off my running shoes. Mary Ann had the television set to a music station. My head pounded from the high volume, and the spot between my brows tightened. So much for the relaxing afterglow of my nightly run. I pressed the off button on the TV and was greeted with blissful silence. Hey! Mary Ann charged out of her room wearing a black skirt that, in my opinion, stopped several inches too short. She waved the mascara wand she was holding. I was listening to that. I strode to the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and reached for a glass. The entire complex doesn't want to listen to Lady Gaga at 9 o'clock at night. We just got rid of the noisemaker upstairs. She threw her arms wide and made an exasperated sound. I'm going out, and it's my getting ready music. Well, you don't have to blast it at that head-splitting volume. Have some consideration for your neighbors, Squint. Mary Ann had been dubbed Squint at age 5 after the squinty expression complete with pout, which she made whenever she wasn't getting her way. If I were to attempt that pretty pout, I'm fairly certain I'd scare people. I pressed my glass against the water dispenser on the refrigerator. Speaking of neighbors, did you notice the sold sign for the condo upstairs? Her pouty face lit up immediately. He's already moved in. I watched him carrying boxes all day, and he has arm muscles that give new meaning to the word sinewy. Yum! I tossed her a chastising glance, then placed my glass into the dishwasher. I'm sure whoever he is has a brain, you know. And hopefully the decency to tread lightly, so I wouldn't have to hear his footsteps pounding across my ceiling at all hours. She rolled her eyes, then trotted after me as I headed toward my bedroom. All I'm saying is that if I didn't already have a date tonight, I'd be running upstairs to borrow a cup of sugar, if you know what I mean. I'm afraid I do. I turned back to study my little sister, whose eyes danced with excitement. Mary Ann wore a midriff-bearing sparkly pink tank top that complemented her petite figure and her honey blonde hair. My heart tugged. She and I were like night and day. What I wouldn't give to be the adorable, carefree sister instead of the tall, plain, responsible one. I lifted my chin. Actually, I have a date too. Her brows crimped, then she placed her hand on her hip. With who? I shrugged, then headed into my ensuite bathroom. Caitlin's fiancé has a friend, so they're setting me up. She leaned against the doorjamb, eyeing me critically. Although I desperately needed to shower, her tone stopped me short. I crossed my arms, swiveled to face her, and frowned. What? Nothing. Her brows came together, then she threw her hands up. It's just, you need to be more discriminating with men so you don't get your heart broken again. My jaw dropped. You mean like what happened to you with your last boyfriend? She looked insulted. Griff was never my boyfriend. He was just my flavor of the moment. I reached down and tugged off a sweaty sock. Nice to describe your ex like an ice cream cone. You can't make a man be something he's not. She shrugged. If a guy doesn't make me happy, he's gone. I don't let them walk all over me, unlike some people. Ahem, Victor. I broke up with Victor eventually, didn't I? I yanked off the other smelly sock and tossed it in her direction. She dodged the stink bomb, wrinkling her nose. Ease up. I'm just trying to help. I know. I sighed, leaned back against the counter, then rubbed a palm across my forehead. You're right. I didn't want to give up on him. Just like I didn't want to give up on my dad. He'd promised to go to rehab thousands of times, but had never followed though. Lifting my eyes, I met my sister's gaze, and we exchanged a knowing look I felt deep in my gut. You can't make someone change if he doesn't want to, she said, her tone uncharacteristically sober. After a long pause, she finally pushed off the door jamb with her hip. Life's short. You need to implement a one-strike and you're out dating policy. That's all I'm saying. Maybe Trenton won't get a strike. Maybe he'll be the perfect date. I raised an eyebrow. Ever think of that? Isn't Trenton the capital of New Jersey? She laughed, then sashayed away in her tiny black skirt. Lock the front door when you leave. I pushed the bathroom door closed, leaned back against it, then snickered. Mary Ann was such a goofball. She did have a good point about men, though. I needed to accept that no guy would change unless he wanted to. Yes, exactly. So I'd utilize her one strike and you're out policy. Starting with Trenton this Friday night. After my double-date dinner on Friday night, I strode through the marble lobby of the Joffrey's Hotel, listening to Paul and Trenton debate the value of shorting stocks. Yawn. I still had a hard time believing Caitlin's fiancé was Paul Joffrey's, owner of the super ritzy Joffrey's hotel chain. He donated their ballroom as a location for Founding Friendships' charity auction tonight. How's that for mega generous? Crossing fingers that his friend turned out to be just as sweet. When the four of us entered the grand ballroom, we were greeted with upbeat music jetting from the giant speakers that surrounded the DJ station, which was set up next to the wooden stage across the room. I eyed the rest of my surroundings. White and gold drapery, a brilliant crystal chandelier above us, and long sets of tables against the sidewall for the silent auction. My stomach knotted as I adjusted the top of my emerald green strapless dress. I laced my arm through Caitlin's. What if nobody bids on my auction? I can't believe I let Jill talk me into donating when I have zero credentials. She turned to me, her eyes widening as she flipped her silky red hair over her shoulder. You're an incredible decorator. I should know since you help me out all the time with my remodel. But I don't have any professional training, and Jill's starting the bidding at $500. I brushed by a familiar woman wearing a long purple gown, who I was pretty sure I'd seen on TV. An anchor woman, maybe? The entire population of Sacramento seemed to have turned out for this event. Wow. You worry too much, Ginger. She squeezed my arm, then leaned toward my ear as we trailed behind the guys who were heading toward our VIP table. So, what do you think of Trenton? I was dying to ask you all through dinner. I glanced over at my date, who was chatting away with Paul. Trenton looked studiously handsome, with rimless glasses that complemented his intelligent demeanor. He wore an obviously expensive suit, had impeccable manners, and hadn't come close to a strike yet. He's nice. Nice? That's the best you've got? She made an incredulous sound. Trenton was named one of Sacramento's top 10 most desirable bachelors in the latest issue of Sacramento Living magazine. I raised a brow. Yeah, but what number was he? Caitlin burst out laughing at my joke. Paul stopped at our table, swiveled, then slipped his arm around her. What did I miss? Nothing, I interjected, shaking my head. Here I was on a date with Mr. Top 10 Sacramento, and all I could come up with to describe him was nice. What was wrong with me? I'm going to excuse myself and get a drink. I'll join you. Trenton stepped up beside me, and together we strolled to the bar where he ordered us each a glass of wine. Then he surveyed the sea of people in the room. Appears to be a successful fundraiser. Paul says you donated to the silent auction? Oh yes. My cheeks heated. Decorating services. I'm not certified or anything though. Some of the most successful people in the world don't even have a college degree. He adjusted the glasses on his nose. Where is your bidding sheet? My office could use a facelift. At least that's what my ex kept telling me. An awkward silence followed, so I took a sip of wine. Had he seriously just brought up his ex on our first date? Should that count as a strike? Where was an umpire when I needed one? Deciding it had to have been an innocent comment, I asked, "When did you two break up?" He touched my bare shoulder. Months ago. That's old news. Trust me. His hand felt awkward against my skin, and I found myself wishing I'd worn a dress with sleeves. Plus, he was peering at me in such a scrutinizing way that something compelled me to ask, "Why did you two break up?" We'd been together a couple years, and she was ready to settle down and start a family. He laid a hand over the silk tie on his chest. Rochelle's a sweet woman, but I'm only 32. My business has just taken off. Now is not the time to be focusing on a family. Plus, Rochelle's a supermodel and she just released her own perfume. Only Rochelle. Children would kill her career. What the? His ex was Rochelle Richards? I'm sorry it didn't work out, I said, trying not to freak that his ex was a supermodel. Seriously, if I'm in the photo, then my friends have to take 5 shots just to get one with my eyes open. Sad but true. Old news, Trenton repeated, then snaked his arm around me. Let's take a look at your auction sheet so I can place my bid. One thing I will say is that Rochelle had impeccable taste in interior design. I sucked in a breath, suddenly feeling bad for Rochelle. Shouldn't he have made the kid thing clear before she'd invested 2 years into him? That's why I'd cut things off with Greg right away. It's not right to lead someone on. Arg. Now was not the time to be thinking about Greg Shaffer again. Hello? I was on a date with Mr. Top 10 Sacramento. I waved a hand toward midway down the tables. My donation is number 183. Maybe around that area. His mouth stretched into a sexy grin. Let's check it out. Okay. My belly squeezed in terror. What if nobody bid on the auction? What if they hated the before and after photos of my living room? Well, they could bite me because I loved it. But I didn't want to let down Jill and all of the people she was trying to help. Besides, art was mental therapy for me. What if rejection ruined my muse and 3 bids already? Trenton ran his finger down the auction sheet, then stopped at the bottom where he scribbled his bid. Make that 4. Oh my. I peeked down at the bid sheet to make sure he'd read correctly. You bid $1,000. He set the pen back down. It's for charity and it's a write-off, right? True, I said, marveling at the fact that my services were going to bring Founding Friendships a grand. Awesome. Suddenly, the lyrics from One Republic's Good Life belted out from the speakers. Lights shimmered across the wooden floor as Jill Parnell, head of Founding Friendships, stepped onto the stage holding a microphone. This could really be a good life, good life. Trenton and I hurried back to our table, which was located right by the stage, then clapping thundered across the room. Thank you for being here tonight. For all of your support. Jill began, then gave a brief overview of Founding Friendships and an emotional account of the woman they were helping, Beth, who'd been alone on the streets 2 months ago after she'd left her abusive husband. Tears filled my eyes, and I placed a hand over my chest, so honored to be a part of this event. Near the stage, I spotted Jill's boyfriend Ryan Shaw, who watched Jill with a look of pride. Then my gaze drifted to the man standing next to Ryan. My breath caught in my throat, and I gripped the table as I dropped into my seat. Sandy brown hair, broad chest, and almond brown eyes that made me think of a warm summer night. Greg Shaffer. His gaze met mine and held. The corner of his mouth turned up, and a hot rush of lightning shot through me. Gulp. Chapter 2. Can you believe Ellen is due in 6 weeks? Caitlin laced her arm through mine as we strolled past the silent auction tables, so I could check on my donation sheet and she could put her final bids on the day spa packages she had her eye on. You're going to her baby shower, right? A week from Sunday? Wouldn't miss it. I glanced over at our friend and coworker. Yes, we worked at one of those offices where you knew and loved almost everyone, whose belly ballooned into her hubby as they slow danced to the 80s hit, Reunited by Peaches and Herb. This happened to be the same song that Greg and I had danced to last month, because that's just how my luck was going tonight. Ginger, is everything all right? Not exactly. It had been hard enough trying to get Greg off my mind when he was in San Diego. Now that I knew he was in the very same room as me, it's like he'd been tattooed on my brain. Can you keep a secret? Absolutely. She traced an X across her heart with her index finger, then leaned closer. Spill. I took a deep breath, needing to confide in my friend before I lost my mind. There's this guy. Of course there is. She made an I knew it face. Not a problem with Trenton, I hope? I shook my head. No. Good. She paused to run her finger down a bid list, then moved on. I totally see you two together. He's smart and sexy. You're exuberant and sweet. A perfect match. I'm pretty sure he's not over his old girlfriend, I said, thinking that any decent would have called a strike on Trenton after the repeated X talk. But maybe I was being too critical. According to Paul, they're way over. Caitlin stopped to check another spa package halfway down the auction tables, placed a higher bid, then turned her attention back to me. Is this guy problem you're having with Victor? You're way too good for him, Ginger. He stood you up so many times. It physically pained me watching you give him chance after chance. You deserve way better. Why does everyone keep bringing up Victor? I glanced back at the bid sheet, thinking I could really use a day at the spa to chill me out. But I'd used my credit card so much lately, it should have melted. Sigh. Ooh, the spa package was number 180, so my donation sheet must be coming up. My problem's not him, it's... While still ogling the spa display, I sauntered forward and collided with a broad, muscular chest. Warm hands wrapped around my elbows. Are you all right? A male asked. Chills vibrated through me at the familiar voice. Biting my lip, I lifted my gaze. Almond brown eyes confirmed I'd barreled into Greg, who peered down at me in a way that had my tummy doing successive flips. Hi, I stumbled. Smooth Ginger. Very smooth. His mouth curved upward. Hi yourself. Ginger, Caitlin paused mid-sentence, her gaze flipping from me to Greg then back to me again. I'm just going to check on my last bid. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I gave her a look, begging her not to leave me, but clearly she'd failed language class because she gave me a thumbs-up sign before skittering off. Hello? Totally inappropriate gesture when I was on a date with a friend she had set me up with. Sheesh. Taking a deep breath, I turned back to Greg and willed the butterflies in my belly to chill. No such luck. Are you in town for the weekend? I asked as every ounce of my being felt the heat from his skin where he still held my arms. With a faint squeeze, he released me, as a woman slipped between him and the table to scribble on a bid sheet. Greg checked the paper she'd written on, then he turned back to me. I'm in town permanently, actually. I was offered a position at the hospital where I interviewed last month, the day we met. I just bought my own place. In town. Permanently. Yikes. I swallowed. Congratulations. Thanks. He glanced over my shoulder. You're here with your boyfriend? Me? I followed his gaze to where Trenton sat next to Paul. They seemed deep in conversation, likely about stocks or some other equally tranquilizing financial discussion. Snooze. Trenton's not my boyfriend. He's a blind date. How's that going? I twisted my long hair around my finger. The same as most first dates. Awkward. Except nothing had been awkward with Greg the first night we'd met. He'd come to the dance club with Ryan, and, after dancing together all night, Greg and I had gone to a diner to spend more time together, which was when I discovered he was an emergency room doctor, just like my dad. As if on cue, painful memories from my childhood flooded my mind. Dad's drinking. My parents arguing. Me having to run at night just to escape the chaos. Ginger? Everything okay? My gaze flicked up to Greg's, and his worried expression made my chest tighten. Fine. I should probably get back to my table, though. His eyes searched mine as if trying to peer deep into my soul. If that's what you need. What I needed was to get far away from him. The ache I'd felt after our last goodbye had increased exponentially now that I'd seen him again. We had incredible chemistry. I could see us dating. Maybe even more than dating. But I didn't want a future with an overstressed, overworked ER doctor whose dream was a house full of kids he'd rarely see. And I wasn't a girl who indulged in flings just for the fun of it. Although part of me begged to reconsider my stance in this case. Well, it was nice seeing you again. I forced a smile, then compulsively touched his arm lightly. An unwise idea, as the feel of his muscles had my stomach bouncing again. You too. His jaw tightened, and a small crease formed between his brows as I turned and walked away. I hid out at my table with my date the rest of the night. Trenton even managed conversation that had nothing to do with his fabulous ex. Unfortunately, it had everything to do with the stock market, which magically turned my eyelids to lead. When I slipped out of the event early, I'd thankfully avoided running into Greg again. The only downside was I didn't stay long enough to see who had won my auction. I need 10 diapers. Rachel sped down the shopping aisle, leaving Caitlin and me hurrying after her. We were already a quarter of the way into our lunch hour, and still had quite a bit of shopping to do for Ellen's baby shower. Let me get this straight. I pushed the shopping cart forward, then jumped onto the bar above the wheels and quickly caught up to Rach. You're going to heat up 10 different candy bars onto 10 diapers, then make us eat them, and guess which candy bar we munched on. Aren't diapers flammable? Rach stopped short, her eyes widening. You think? I'd hate to blow up Ellen's microwave during her baby shower. Talk about a party stopper. Caitlin lifted a box of diapers from the shelf and placed them in the cart. Just heat the candy bars on a plate first, then scoop them onto the diapers. Problem solved. The image of melted brown chocolate in the center of a diaper left a disturbing visual in my mind. That's just gross. It's supposed to be cute. Rachel's expression turned panicky for a moment before she gestured to the paper in her hand. Whatever. Ellen requested the game, and you know how she'll get if we veer off her list. We're doing it. Our friend Ellen Holbrook gave new meaning to the term Type A. She was super organized, meticulous, and freaked if plans went awry. If we wanted to keep the mom to be a happy camper, straying from her list would be most unwise. I giggled. Looks like we're all eating pretend poo. Can't we just sniff it? Caitlin wrinkled her nose. Think of what we have to look forward to in our future, ladies. Real poopy diapers. Ick. Rach gazed down at her list. Not excited about that. I'm not having kids. An unexpected wave of sadness washed through me as I stated it aloud. Not that I have anyone to reproduce with at the moment, anyway. Warm brown eyes flashed in my mind. The corners of his eyes crinkling as his mouth lifted into a smile as if he were happy to see me. Rachel's head snapped up. You don't want kids? Ever? I shook my head, clearing thoughts of Greg away. The suggestion terrifies me. I grabbed the list from Rach. Next up are 50 rolls of toilet paper. Ah, the diapering game. Caitlin took over pushing the cart as we speed walked toward the proper section. This one doesn't involve a microwave, so we're safe. I laughed, but stopped short at the look Rach was giving me. What? She shook her head. Sorry, I just totally pictured you having kids. It's none of my business. What do you mean, it's none of your business? Caitlin made a right turn, then started yanking packages of toilet paper from the shelf. We're all friends. If we can't speak our minds, then what's the point? I suppressed a smile. Not long ago, we'd had trouble getting Caitlin to express what she thought. She'd been raised to portray her life as neat and perfect, even during the times when it spun out of control. Like mine seemed to be doing now with Greg on the brain, and the boring career I'd chosen. Oh joy. It's totally normal to freak about bringing a child into this world. Caitlin dropped the final package into the cart, then placed a hand over her chest. The mere thought that I could turn into my mother is enough to scare me into celibacy. But I definitely want to have a family with Paul. Eventually. My throat tightened. Caitlin nudged me with her elbow. I heard you're going on a second date with Trenton. Wouldn't you like to procreate someday with one of Sacramento's most eligible bachelors? Not even a little bit, I said honestly. Truthfully, I was still debating whether or not Trenton had struck out, and I'd been too much of a wuss to make the call. He seems too business-oriented for my taste. Caitlin seemed thoughtful for a moment. Well, what are you looking for in a guy? Someone who has time for me, I said immediately. My dad had never made time for me. He'd been too busy working and drinking. The right guy would definitely have to make healthy life choices. He would be financially responsible, but also know how to balance in fun. Both of my friends stopped walking, giving me their full attention. I raised a shoulder. My ideal guy would be there for me, just like I'd be there for him too. If such a man even exists. Rach's eyes turned misty. That's what I used to wonder before I found Noah. Don't worry. He's out there and you'll find him. Maybe it's just a matter of timing. Or maybe your guy is Trenton, and he just hasn't shown you his fun side yet. Caitlin's tone felt overly optimistic. It took me a while to realize Paul was the one for me. Yeah, I remember. I laughed, thinking back to when I'd offered to paint the interior of Caitlin's house if she'd start dating again. Maybe I just needed to keep putting myself out there, even when it felt awkward. I was glad then that I'd agreed to go on date number 2 with Trenton. What's next on the list, Rach? Safety pins and blue ribbon, then we're home free. She threw us a woeful look. Until Ellen makes additions to the list, that is. Caitlin and I both giggled. Rach and Ellen had been best friends for years, and their relationship reminded me of an old married couple. Ups and downs and all-arounds, but they still seemed like a family. See? It's not like I needed to have kids of my own. I could dote on my friends' munchkins, and they would feel like family. I could be Auntie Ginger and spoil them rotten. Really, it was pointless to waste time thinking about having children of my own. Sometimes I felt like I already had a child, taking care of my sister all the time. I'd even had to cover her half of the rent again this month because she'd blown her cash on a girls' trip up the coast. No, having a baby would be too much responsibility for me. It was hard enough trying to get my own life together. Suddenly, almond brown eyes appeared in my head, making me feel warm and serene like when I ran by the river. Actually, the tingles that rippled through me felt even better, like my future was deep and filled with endless possibilities. Why did I have to be attracted to the one guy who was totally wrong for me? My masochistic mind needed to move on. Staying away from Greg would be tricky now that he lived in Sacramento. He'd obviously be spending time with Jill's boyfriend Ryan, but I'd just avoid attending any events that Greg might be invited to. Totally doable. Monday evening, I set out for my nightly run at sunset. Usually I followed the same path, but after the day I'd had, I needed a couple extra miles to clear my head. Today at work, Rich Woodward had decreed that any time employees came to my office to stock up on office supplies, they had to fill out paperwork in my presence. In triplicate. Seriously? It's like we were in high school, and I'd been voted gatekeeper of pens and pencils. Like my career choice hadn't depressed me enough before this new twist. On top of that, I'd made the mistake of complaining to my mom while we were talking on the phone. She'd emphatically maintained that more responsibility equaled job security. She so did not get my point. Or me, for that matter. I mean, job security was all practical and lovely, but in my case, it was lulling me to snooze at my desk. Sad but true. I made a mental note to get more sleep tonight, so that didn't happen again. I pumped my arms faster and my feet followed in rhythm until brilliant colors swept through my mind. Vibrant orange. Almond brown. Splatters of bright yellow. My thoughts swirled as I envisioned my paintbrush sweeping across a blank canvas, filling the empty space with a world of hope. Before I knew it, my condo complex came into sight, so I slowed my pace to a walk. Wiping my damp forehead with the back of my hand, colors continued to dance in my mind, and I itched to bring these happy thoughts to reality on my easel. I pulled out my key, which turned easily in the lock, telling me I'd wasted my breath lecturing my sister on safety. With sweat rolling down my temples, I pushed the door open and barged in. Mary Ann? How many times do I? My mouth froze when I spotted the back of a very built man on a ladder in the middle of our living room. He wore khaki shorts that hugged his amazing backside snugly as he spidered down the steps. Mary Ann held one leg of the ladder, watched him descend, then turned to me with a wicked smile. Meet our new upstairs neighbor, who was kind enough to change a light bulb for me. Sweat dripped down my jawline and under my chin as my eyes narrowed. Our living room light bulbs had been perfectly lit this morning. Obviously, one bulb had been sacrificed in my sister's plot to give our unsuspecting neighbor a hero complex, thus granting her the role of the damsel that needed rescuing. Gag. Although she had been accurate in her judgment of our neighbor's sinewy arms when she'd ogled him as he'd moved in the other day. I'd totally give her credit for that assessment. Shiver. Those muscles made me want to slide my hands over them and... The man turned so he was now facing me. Hi, Ginger. Almond brown eyes danced with amusement. Or should I say, hi, neighbor. You heat how? Intelligent words escaped me. Clearly, my brain was having an adrenaline overload from my run because it appeared that Greg Shaffer was standing in front of me in my living room and had just confirmed he was my new neighbor. This isn't happening. He winked at me. Nice to see you too. Mary Ann thrust her hands to her hips, and her mouth transformed into her infamous pout. You guys know each other? Not as well as I'd like. He tossed his screwdriver in the air, caught it easily, then turned to Mary Ann. I asked your sister out, and she turned me down. My heart pounded in my chest. That was a month ago. Mary Ann's head whipped my way, and she pointed an accusatory finger at me. You acted like you didn't know who our new neighbor was. I didn't. My mind whirled. Greg had just said he wanted to get to know me better. But still, I reminded myself that it didn't matter if he was interested in me. Big family, ring any bells? Stressful career, leaving no time for the significant other? Did you know I lived here when you bought your condo? Are you stalking me? The thought secretly thrilled me. I didn't find out you lived here until after I put an offer on the place. He strode across the room, then dropped the screwdriver into a brown tool bag. Ryan told me about the short sale, and I got my condo for a steal. Not that stalking you would be a cumbersome proposition. A zing zipped through me, then I mentally chastised my body for the traitorous reaction. Mary Ann's brows quirked. I thought you were dating the capital of New Jersey. I am. I stole a glance at Greg, whose jaw muscles tightened. Mary Ann, on the other hand, appeared elated. She rubbed her hands together. I looked Trenton Davis up online and saw that he was in Sacramento Living Magazine's top 10 most desirable bachelors. I rolled my eyes. Why did everyone care about Trenton's status in Sacramento Living? I'm sure Greg could easily be voted number 1 in Sacramento's top 10 bachelors. Didn't mean his demanding career wouldn't drive him to the bottle. Or that he'd make time for me. You're a runner? Greg asked, breaking the awkward silence. Every evening. Since the front door was still open, I pushed it shut, then wiped away the rest of my sweat. Ick. Not that it mattered what I looked like, since I wasn't interested in dating him. I kicked off my shoes, then turned back around to face him again. It's the best time to run. I beg to differ. The corner of his mouth rose. Every morning is the best time to run. That's why I've made it a habit. Greg was a runner? Interesting. I stepped forward, shook my head, and suppressed a smirk. There is nothing more beautiful than watching the sunset as you run. Wrong again. He took a step toward me. The sunrise is the most incredible sight you'll ever see. Mary Ann made an exasperated sound. If you'll both excuse me, I need to make a phone call. Yeah. My mouth twitched at Greg's determined expression. You sure are stubborn in your erroneous beliefs. And you're cute with your mistaken conclusions. His gorgeous eyes danced, and he came even closer. I'm trying to picture how amazing you'll look when you realize I'm right. I raised a brow. Is that a challenge? He grinned, standing only a few inches away now. Definitely. I can't run tomorrow morning though, because I work graveyard tonight. My mood deflated immediately. I'll work. Where had I heard that excuse before? That's right. All my life. No worries. We're each entitled to our own opinions, so let's just leave it at that. His face fell. Did I say something wrong? No, I lied, avoiding his eyes. Ginger. He sighed, then surprised me by gesturing to the wall across from my couch. That picture is amazing. You're very talented. I followed the direction of his gaze. The rectangular painting was 4 feet by 2 feet with swirls of white and an arch of yellow across the deep blue background. I'd painted the scene when my dad had promised to go to rehab. You remembered I'm an artist. His eyes met mine. I remember everything we talked about that night. Me too. Butterflies danced in my belly. I couldn't believe I'd just admitted that to him. Your painting's very emotional. He circled his hand around the white swirls, then stopped next to the curved yellow strokes. This feels like the promise of a new day. More like a broken promise. Every muscle in my body froze as I realized what I'd blurted. I'd gotten way too comfortable with Greg somehow, and I so wanted to take my words back. His brows came together. Who broke a promise to you? Ignore me. I waved a hand, trying to dismiss the seriousness of what I'd admitted. Just the artist being dramatic. It's practically required if you want that title, you know. He reached up, his fingers brushing my cheek. I don't want to ignore you. My heart melted. I wanted to forget reason and give him a chance. Give us a chance. But I knew that wasn't practical. I stepped back. It's late. I need to get cleaned up and ready for bed. His expression filled with confusion. You're avoiding me, but I can't figure out why. Don't be silly. I strode to the door, grabbed the handle, and pulled it open. Thanks again for changing our light bulb. I mentally cringed at how lame that sounded. It was a strenuous task, but glad I could help. He lifted his tool bag, followed me to the door, then stopped at the threshold. He turned around and leaned close to my ear, his breath tickling my skin. "We're going to take that run, you know. It's just a matter of when." Tingles danced across my chest, and I had the distinct feeling he wasn't just talking about running. My throat went dry and I swallowed. "Goodbye, Greg." He straightened, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Good night." As soon as he was safely outside, I shut the door and flopped back against it. The faint sounds of him climbing the stairs up to his own unit echoed through the door. I sucked in a deep breath, then stared at the whirlwind of emotions in my painting. Only now, they reminded me of Greg. Chapter 3. The next day at work, I received an earful of complaints from my coworkers when they had to sign out on any and all office supplies they needed. I'd kept repeating, "Don't kill the messenger," until I coiled ready to explode. This is why I squealed with glee when Jill called and invited me out for drinks after work with our friend Kristen. Sitting on a navy blue couch in the Joffrey's Hotel lounge, I lifted my margarita off the glass table and gripped the stem like it was the last drink on earth. Everyone has to fill out a form each time they take so much as a lead pencil refill from the supply closet, which is ridiculous. Rich Woodward used to be the coolest boss ever. Now he's putting us under the microscope when we haven't even done anything wrong. Kristen sat between Jill and me on the couch and raised a finger. But something has changed, or he wouldn't have altered his behavior. You just don't know what it is. You think, I said, realizing she had to be right. I never thought of that. Kristen Moore ran her own successful marriage and family therapy business. She could cut to the heart of any matter whenever we had a problem. For a moment, I considered asking her about my continuing and problematic attraction to Greg. This morning, I ran into him when I was leaving for the office, and he was returning home from work. He showed me an abandoned kitten he'd found, which he decided to keep. How adorable was that? "Sorry you've had a hard day at work." Jill sipped her Chardonnay, then her mouth stretched into a smile. "But I have some news I think will cheer you up." "I'm all ears." I put my lips against my salt-rimmed glass, the chilled, sweet and sour liquid bursting with flavor against my tongue. Yum. Jill twisted on the couch, so she faced us fully. "First, I'd like to thank you both again for your donations to the Founding Friendships fundraiser. We raised enough money that we're signing a lease on a duplex, where each unit has 2 bedrooms. Bob and I have several candidates we're going to approach this weekend, once the homes are move-in ready." Kristen toyed with the thin black straw in her glass of soda water with lime. "That's amazing, Jill. Congratulations." To Founding Friendships. I clinked my glass into theirs, then indulged in a large, refreshing swig. "You're right. That did cheer me up." The corner of Jill's mouth turned upward. "That's not the news I was talking about." I stirred my frothy green drink. "Oh." She shook her head. "Get this. Jenna McCoy from Sacramento Living Magazine attended the fundraiser Friday night. She's eager to write an article on Founding Friendships and the home you'll be bringing up to date. Interviews. Photos. The works." No way. Adrenaline pumped through me, even though I didn't know whose house I'd be decorating yet. But I could transform any space. In fact, the more challenging the better. I wiggled in my seat. "This would be fabulous exposure for your charity, Jill." Kristen squeezed my forearm, her expression making it clear she'd already known about the article. "This could also be the advertising you need to start your own decorating business." My throat tightened and my eyes burned. "My own business? We all know you haven't been happy at work." Jill's words came out in a rush, as if she couldn't wait to say them. "When I took that art class with you last month, your face lit up, and I could see that was your passion. Then I saw for myself how you decorated your condo. You've got a gift, Ginger. Maybe you could decorate part-time and fatten up your portfolio before you take the leap completely. Kristen leaned toward me. We support you no matter what your decision is, but we believe in your talent and want you to be happy in your career. Totally up to you. Jill nodded in agreement. Not to put too much pressure on you, but Jenna needs to know by tomorrow if you're interested in the spread. It'll be 6 pages in their next issue, which means you'll have to start on the winner's place immediately so you can finish in 2 weeks. Ideas swarmed my head in a massive rush. Curtains, area rugs, sofas and love seats, vases filled with brilliant flowers. I squealed, reached past Kristen and gripped Jill's hand. Please tell Jenna that absolutely and positively the answer is yes. I'd be thrilled to have her photograph the before and after photos of the home I bring up to date. Thank you for this opportunity. You have no idea what all of this exposure means to me. Jill scooted closer to Kristen, squeezing my hand. When I asked you to donate your decorating services, I had the feeling this could be a life-changing event for you. Misty-eyed, I stared at my friend. This is unbelievable. For the first time, I could really live the life I want with nothing to hold me back. Kristen joined her hand with ours. We believe in you, sweetie. Thanks so much, you guys. I tilted my head, wondering if anyone had upped the $1,000 my financial advisor, my date had offered on my donation. So, whose home am I decorating? Who had the highest bid? Jill lifted her glass. That's another part of the good news. You already know him. Trenton. Energy coursed through me. Maybe if I called him now, he'd let me start work tonight. Nope. She shook her head. Not Trenton. Greg Shaffer. My mouth fell open and my face went numb. Gee, Greg? Yes. She reached into her briefcase, pulled out a piece of paper, and handed it to me. He tripled the highest bid. Look here. Isn't that amazing? Not exactly the word I would have chosen. I stared down at the scribbled numbers, unable to comprehend all of the zeros before my eyes. Greg had pretty much guaranteed he'd win with that number. I could hardly believe this. In order to achieve my life's dream, I'd have to spend the next 2 weeks working closely with the one man who had the power to break my heart. Conflicting emotions stormed through me. With my insane attraction to Greg, I needed to steer clear of him so my crazy feelings would die out. But I'd always wanted to use art in my daily work and should never have caved to my parents back in college when I'd switched to the major they deemed more appropriate. I could correct that mistake now. This was my perfect chance to change my career. I had to take it. When I got home from drinks with the girls, I must have picked up my phone and practiced what I'd say a dozen times. Hello, this is Ginger. Hi, I'm the girl downstairs. Hey, you're a winner. Finally, I punched in his number and let the words fall where they would, starting by thanking him for his generous donation and congratulating him on his win. When I let him know about Jenna McCoy's offer to write the article on founding friendships, he agreed to let her photograph his place and told me he could meet for the initial consultation tonight. Yay! 15 minutes later, I trotted upstairs to his condo with my sketchpad in hand. I knocked on the door, reminding myself that I was a professional and would keep a professional distance from my client. When the front door opened, Greg's eyes latched onto mine and his mouth curved upward. My breath caught in my throat. Hands down, he could be Sacramento's #1 most desirable bachelor. Wow! He dressed simply in a short-sleeved shirt that stretched across his muscular chest and a pair of khaki shorts that showed off his strong runner's legs. He looked hot. Absolutely hot. No, Ginger. A professional decorator would not focus on how gorgeous her client looked. She'd care about the project. I cleared my throat. Good evening. His mouth twitched. "Good evening, yourself." Oh man. Did he have to sound so adorable when he greeted me? Tightening my sketchpad in my hand, I said, "I appreciate you letting me come on such short notice. Jen is on a deadline, and we need the consultation before I can get to work on the project." He leaned against the door, holding his new kitten in one hand. "Decided to forego your nightly run?" I twisted my dark hair around my finger, noting how he'd veered away from a business topic. I also noticed how cute he looked holding that kitten, but I restrained from petting her since I was only here to work. "This first meeting is important. You paid a lot of money for my decorating services, and I plan do the best job possible. On behalf of the charity, of course." There. Back on track. He held the door wide. "Let's get to it then. Would you like a drink? Soda, iced tea, juice?" My throat did feel parched, and professionals needed to stay hydrated, right? "I'd love some water." "Thanks." I went inside, the smell of fresh paint wafting up my nose. White walls, new beige carpet, and an open floor plan. This was going to be fun. "We need to discuss your expectations first, and then your budget," I said, following him into the kitchen. Light speckled granite countertops. Dark cabinets. Stainless steel appliances. This had cost some money, and everything looked brand new. "You did the kitchen yourself?" "Housewarming gift from my mom." He pressed a glass to the water dispenser on his fridge with one hand, while still holding the gray kitten in his other. "She had it done last week after I closed escrow." "It's beautiful." His mom must be very generous. My parents hadn't even sent flowers when I'd moved into the condo downstairs. It's not like I'd purchased it, but I'd made the place my home, so that should count for something. "I assume you don't want anything changed in here?" "You tell me." He set the glass on the counter next to me. "I'm a doctor, not a decorator. I'm actually an office manager." I figured we should clear the air about that right away. I lifted the glass and took a sip, the cool liquid feeling like heaven as it rolled down my throat. Until now, I've been decorating as a hobby, mostly for myself. But I've helped out quite a bit with my friend's remodel. He leaned onto the counter, the kitten making a soft mew before she started batting at a pencil on the countertop. "I'm honored to be your first official client." Twisting my hair, I lifted my lashes. "I hope you're not too disappointed in my pathetic credentials. I know how much money you paid at the auction, and I don't want you to feel you've been cheated in any way." He straightened. "I didn't place the bid expecting an extensive resume." Thus came the nagging question that burned my brain. "Why did you then?" If the answer was what I suspected, I'd have to make it clear that this remodel would only be about business. I certainly didn't want him to think he had a chance at more than friendship with me. His expression grew serious. "I bid on your item for one specific reason. The photos you framed and displayed on the auction table?" The before picture showed a sterile environment that had all of the makings of a house, but wasn't a home. It didn't have heart. My hand slipped, my glass bumping against the counter with a clank. He'd just described the exact feeling I'd had when I rented the unit. "Your after picture showed a place that had been transformed, filled with colors and warmth, a home I'd be eager to come back to every night. Or every morning, depending on my schedule," he joked. I chuckled, remembering he was working the graveyard shift. He stroked the kitten's tiny little head. "I want you to do the same thing for my place. Make it a home. Simple as that." "Oh," I said, my insides glowing from the compliment. Then my cheeks heated, and I glanced away. Guess I'd been pretty far off, thinking he'd bid on the auction because he liked me. Oh, embarrassment. He set the kitty on the counter, then tilted his head my way. "You thought maybe I'd bought the package because I wanted to date you?" "No way." I scoffed, even though he'd read my mind. The kitten pranced over to me, rubbing his soft cheek against my hand, and I was glad for the distraction. We should get back to business. Let's talk style so we can narrow down exactly what you want. All right. He picked up the kitty and gestured toward the living room. We'll discuss my style, or lack thereof, over on my very unfashionable sofa. My cheeks burned as I walked toward his couch, unable to believe I'd let my thoughts get personal again. So mortifying. He fell in line beside me, then turned my way. I bought your package based on your talent. True. But that doesn't mean I don't also want to date you. In case you were wondering. I wasn't. I tried to keep a straight face to maintain my professional dignity, but I could feel the corners of my mouth twitching. He winked at me. Glad we cleared that up. Me too, I said, but couldn't control the smile that swept across my face. Chapter 4. After flipping through various magazines, Greg and I decided on a traditional, classic-style interior for his condo. Simple, with clean lines, but also warm and inviting. Jenna, from Sacramento Living magazine, shot the before photos at his place Wednesday afternoon during my lunch hour, so I was able to be there to meet the woman who could jumpstart my very own decorating business. Due to the tight deadline, I promised to have the first room completed by Friday, since she wanted to record the process as well as the results. After work, I gathered paint supplies, then recruited Mary Ann to be my assistant. This is your project. Mary Ann sat on the drop cloth I'd spread across the floor of Greg's den to protect his new carpet. She twirled a paintbrush in her hand. I don't get why I have to be a part of this. I could be on a second date with Liam right now. I dipped my brush into the beige paint. I thought you didn't date guys more than once. No, my rule is that I date a guy until I'm bored. It's not my fault that's usually after the first date. Holding my hand steady, I slid my paintbrush carefully along the doorjamb to keep a straight line. Could you just do this favor for me? If not to be nice to your sister, then to help me out because you bailed on rent this month. I paused, glaring at my sibling with a raised brow. I'm not made of money, you know. She sighed and waved her brush. A professional decorator would hire a painter, not paint herself. Any normal roommate would come up with her share of the rent, I shot back, then dipped my brush into the paint bucket again. Dip. Brush. Paint. Repeat. Besides, I'm going to make painting part of my business. My clients will get more than just decorating when they hire Up to Date by Ginger Nielsen. I'm thinking faux finishes, the works. Up to Date is actually a cute business name. She made a tiny grunt, stood, then patted her belly. You can't expect me to work on an empty stomach, though. I'm going to check out what our hot neighbor has in his fridge. Greg had left to run errands half an hour ago, and I didn't know how long he'd be gone. There's no way I wanted him to return to find Mary Ann snooping through his kitchen. Definitely not professional. Don't you dare eat Greg's food. I blocked the doorway and pointed toward the corner I'd asked her to work on. Then I made a circling motion with my finger. He's my client. We're here to redo his den, not raid his food. Now turn around and get busy. She rolled her eyes but did as instructed. Finally. It's not like he'd care if we grabbed a little snack. I'm sure he'd give you whatever you wanted. It's so obvious he's into you. He is not. Although his words about wanting to date me rolled through my head, enticing me to forget what was reasonable and just give in. But, hello? I had to be realistic here. Doc, remember? It was an honorable profession, but would also mean stress, canceled dates, and watching him fight to cope with the loss of patients. Year after year. And we all knew how my dad had coped with his buddy, Scotch. That wasn't what I wanted in my life anymore. Do you think I'm blind? She dabbed her brush along the corner of the wall at a snail's pace. Actually, I was pretty sure snails moved faster. I had to shake our light bulb to death to get that gorgeous man into my living room. Then you come in all grungy and sweaty, and he can't take his eyes off of you. An image of him passing me outside on his way home from work this morning appeared in my mind. His smile was beginning to feel way too familiar. Why is this happening to me? You're going out with a famous guy Friday night, and our insanely attractive upstairs neighbor is hot for you. She threw me a give me a break look. I'm not exactly rolling with sympathy over here. There's a lot more to Greg than just being hot. I finished the last of my edging, then swapped my paintbrush for the roller. He's smart, funny, and I definitely like him. But he's an ER doctor, and we both know what that means. She widened her eyes. Free healthcare? Pressure. I poured paint into the silver pan, moved my roller across it, then started on the walls. Losing patience will get to him. He'll need a way to manage the pain. I can't take another alcoholic in my life. A doctor is not the right person for me. So date him, then dump him. Her voice held an edge of duh in the tone. This method works wonders for me. I frowned. Greg isn't the type to just have a fling. Convince him. She wiggled her brows. I'm sure it wouldn't take much, judging by the way he devours you with his eyes. He's more grounded than that. I can tell. I shook my head, reminding myself I shouldn't have expected more from my younger sister. She hadn't had a real relationship in years. Besides, I'm not dating a guy who wants kids. Period. You're overthinking things. It's not healthy for your love life. She admired the one corner she'd completed, then set her paintbrush on the bucket as if she were done. What about New Jersey? Any potential there? I'm giving him a chance. Caitlin thinks we'd be great together. I climbed the ladder to reach the high spots closer to the ceiling. We don't have any chemistry, though. Not like I have with. My voice trailed off. Our very built upstairs neighbor? Ha! She bounced over to me, making all kinds of kissy faces. I knew you had it bad for him. You want Greg. Admit it. I gritted my teeth as I pushed my roller across the wall. That's not true. She poked her fingers into my back, then started singing. Ginger likes Greg. Oh man, my sister could irritate me like no other. We're not in junior high, so stop giving me flashbacks. I already told you I don't want to date Greg. That's when I noticed Greg standing the doorway. I cringed, wondering how long he'd been there and how much he'd heard. Mary Ann was going to get an epic lecture from me later. His brows rose and he smirked. Did I just get shot down again? When I wasn't even present to defend myself? I glared at Mary Ann, who had the decency to appear apologetic. I'm afraid you did. Mary Ann clasped her hands together. But if it counts for anything, I was rooting for you. Thanks. He held his fist out, and they bumped knuckles as if they'd known each other for years. Were they ganging up on me? No problem. She tossed me a quick look. I assume this menial labor fulfills my rent obligation. Now, if you two will excuse me, I'm going to run downstairs and get something to eat. I'm starving. I stared after her, unable to believe her nerve. I also wondered how much of our conversation Greg had overheard. I'm sorry about that, I said, stepping down from the ladder. You hired me to do a job, and I thought Mary Ann could help. Clearly, I should have known better. His brows came together. I just realized. Ginger and Mary Ann, like from Gilligan's Island. I let out a small laugh. My parents are huge fans of the show. Mary Ann and I spent much of our childhood pondering what we'd do to survive if stranded on a deserted tropical island. I actually wouldn't mind putting her on one now. Greg chuckled. Since she's your painting assistant, I'm not sure that would be practical. Practical. Yes, I needed to stay reasonable, which would include not talking about not dating my client because he might overhear me. Oh, dumbness. Mew. Mew. I bent down and cooed at Greg's little kitten, who'd wandered in. Careful, buddy, or you'll get paint on you. And trust me, you're not going to want to lick that off. Greg squatted down and scooped him up. I'm naming him the Skipper. My brows came together and I peered at Greg. You mean Skipper, right? Because the Skipper sounds like you're naming him after Gilligan's Island. He grinned. My mouth dropped open. Seriously? Mew. Mew. See? He scratched the kitten behind his ears. The Skipper likes his new name. Oh my. This guy was infuriating and intoxicating. I stood, snatched my paint roller off the tray, then climbed the ladder. My heart pounded in my chest as I rolled it across the wall with way more force than necessary. He wasn't helping me keep my emotional distance by naming his cat the Skipper. That man was just so frustrating. Then I heard a noise behind me and turned to see Greg painting the other wall. The den door was closed and the Skipper must have been put outside because he was nowhere in sight. Oh no. Now I'd started thinking of the kitten as the Skipper. Arg. I rubbed my forehead with the back of my hand. What do you think you're doing? He looked quizzically at his roller. Painting, of course. Why? I mashed my lips together. You paid for a service. The client doesn't help the professional do her job. The corner of his mouth tipped up. You're cute when you're stubborn. And I hate to tell you this, but the professional does whatever the client wants. Within reason. He shot me an intense look that made me wonder what else he wanted me to do. I shivered, then rallied, letting out an exasperated breath as he continued painting again. I'm used to working alone, Greg. It's easier that way. He turned over his shoulder and shot me a meaningful look. Brace yourself. You're about to see how much better life can be with a partner. Whipping my head back around, I attacked the wall with a vengeance. I had an out-of-control, crazy client. That's the only possible explanation. I mean, the Skipper. How could he name his kitten that? It was so mind-boggling. So out of line. And so freaking cute. No, I needed to calm down. Think rationally. Life was less stressful when I only had to worry about myself. I'd decorate the rest of his rooms, Jenna would take the photographs for the article, and in 2 weeks he'd be out of my hair for good. Except for the fact that he lived upstairs. Sigh. Keeping Greg out of my life was becoming more challenging every day. But I had to find a way. The more time I spent with him, the more attracted to him I became, and these feelings would only implode in the end. Suddenly, Greg started whistling the tune of Reunited by Peaches and Herb. Instead of feeling irritated, tingles floated up my neck at the romantic melody we danced to that night. I remembered the feel of his arms around me, warm and amazing. Not good. Chills vibrated down my arms, giving me the urge to forget what was practical and curl up in his arms again. The next day, Rach opened the front door to enter Laurel Ann's, a cute boutique in Old Sacramento with unique home decor. I'm totally stressing about Ellen's baby shower. I want everything to be perfect for her, but you know how demanding she can be. Definitely high maintenance. Unlike Greg, who had given me carte blanche with his credit card to decorate his home however I deemed best. No pressure. I stepped inside the air-conditioned store, cool air caressing my skin. At least you have a precise list to follow. I have to be creative, under a deadline. She threw me a look that was not filled with sympathy. My list is typed with bold fonts and way too many asterisks. How could everything be a priority? I'm going to screw this up and she'll hate me. You're her best friend. She's not going to get mad at you if something goes wrong. Although Ellen still hadn't forgotten that Rach had brought her miniature beagle into the five-star restaurant where Ellen and Henry's rehearsal dinner was held. Rach adored her pup and treated him like family, a hairy family member who shed and slobbered while guests were eating. Ellen had flipped. Thinking of Rach's pooch reminded me of the skipper, so I shook my head to clear the thought away. I had a job to do, in 45 minutes or less since we were on our lunch break. I'm sure the baby shower will be lovely. We'll all sniff those faux dirty diapers, laugh, and have a wonderful time. Let's hope so. She sighed, fingering candles as we browsed along the aisles. What exactly are you looking for? Decor for Greg's den that inspires me. I gazed around at all of the goodies, waiting for something to pop out at me. Quickly, of course. I was on a time crunch. Jen is taking the first round of after photos for her magazine spread tomorrow at noon. This article is my first real credential as a decorator, so the den must be perfect. If I fail to wow her, then I may as well kiss my dream goodbye. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. She followed me to the back of the store and stopped near a bunch of framed artwork. The point of changing careers is so you can enjoy your work. PFF'd. Yeah, but that was before I knew I had to work with Greg Shaffer. Thanks to him, I couldn't sleep all night. I tossed and turned in bed, worried about the skipper being all alone in Greg's condo while he was at work. I wondered if Sacramento living could airbrush the dark circles under my eyes. Rach touched my arm, making me jump. Is everything okay? I just asked you twice if you liked this picture, and you still haven't answered. Sorry. I faked a smile, then glanced at the framed country landscape, which was lovely but didn't feel like Greg at all. Although, it wasn't like I knew that much about him. Except that he was funny, sweet, helpful, and poured lots of love into his kitten. I'm just stressed about the magazine interview. True statement. The article was totally on my ever-growing list of stressful things, along with Greg, my sister, my parents, and the job that had bored me before and now plagued me due to my boss's new affinity for micromanagement. Ginger? Her right brow rose. Just talk to me. Are you worried about your date tomorrow night? My what? Oh, right. I sighed, having totally forgotten about my date with Trenton Davis tomorrow night. Probably a million women would die to go out with Rochelle Richards' ex, but I could only concentrate on the guy who was wrong for me. I'm not sure what to think about Trenton. He's nice. Caitlin thinks we'll make a good couple, but his fascination with all things financial doesn't exactly make me melt. Suddenly, the lyrics of Reunited by Peaches and Herb rolled through my brain, the tune continuing in a whistle. Totally swoon-worthy. I brought my wrist to my forehead. Why couldn't I get Greg out of my head? Rach cleared her throat. You're obviously distracted. Does this have anything to do with that guy you ran into at the fundraiser Friday night? My eyes popped open. How do you know about him? Caitlin told me. Rach picked up a scented diffuser, sniffed the top, then held it out for me to take a whiff. She said you got all gooey over a hot guy. Ryan's friend or something. They've been buddies since elementary school, I said, breathing in sandalwood. The oil reminded me of a run through the woods. Definitely Greg. I turned it over to check the price. That's actually delicious. Just like Greg smelled. I'm helpful sometimes. Rach smiled, then sampled another diffuser. Maybe you could put in a good word about me with my BFF. Tell Ellen how awesome I am so she doesn't freak as much when I blow her shower. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. I smirked, throwing her words back at her. The point of a baby shower is to enjoy yourself. The shower, yes. The planning, not so much. She eyed some figurines at the end of the aisle, lifting a small angel in a blue robe. This is darling. My eyes widened. That won't go with a man's den. She rolled her eyes. For Ellen's baby, silly. In that case, it's adorable. I smiled, then glanced at the rest of the display, my gaze locking on a large bronze statue of a kitten. He sat tall, wearing a focused expression, his front paw frozen as he was about to bat a roll of yarn. My breath caught. Oh my, this is perfect. I pictured the beautiful chest of drawers against Greg's living room wall. A flat-screen TV occupied the top, hiding the chest's beauty. I could move the piece into Greg's den, and this statue would be perfect on top. Maybe add a lamp to highlight the statue, and a frame next to it with a personal photo. 20 minutes later, we checked out at the register. Rach had purchased the darling angel for Ellen, and I had all of the personal touches needed to transform Greg's den. All I had left to do was stop by the mall after work to pick up the curtains and accent pillows I'd put on hold. Walking back to the office, Rach expressed her worries about throwing Ellen the world's best baby shower. She was terrified she'd blow this once-in-a-lifetime occasion. Since I'd already tried to calm her down, this time I smiled and nodded, letting her get her concerns off her chest. My cell phone gave a ping-ping, alerting me that I had a text message. So I discreetly reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Greg Shaffer's name appeared across my screen. Chills tingled through me and I opened the message. How'd the shopping go? I glanced at the time. 1 o'clock, which was the middle of the night for him since he worked the graveyard shift. Mom, Marianne, and I had tiptoed around the house growing up when Dad had worked nights. My fingers flew over the keys and I typed, "Aren't you supposed to be getting your rest right now?" Ping. Ping. Sliding my finger over the screen, I read, "Couldn't be helped. Woke up thinking about you." My stomach heated, so I chastised myself. I had to keep things between us at the client-decorator level. Then my brows furrowed. He really should be fast asleep right now, since he had to work all night. I grew up knowing how demanding this job was and how important being alert was in the ER. I typed back, "As the client, you need to let me worry about the shopping. Go back to sleep." My phone pinged, "You're the boss." Relieved that he'd get the rest he needed, I started to put my phone away. Then I glanced at the box, which held the kitten statue. A rush of adrenaline jolted through me. I couldn't wait to show the statue to him. I whipped out my cell, fingers flying across the keyboard. "P.S. You're going to love what I picked for you. So will the skipper." Seconds later, my phone pinged, "I'm sure we will. Thanks, sunshine." I typed back, "Good night, Greg." Even though the adorable nickname he'd used for me wasn't professional, my mouth curled upward. In fact, I ended up smiling all afternoon. Chapter 5. At noon on Friday, my shaky hands gripped the steering wheel as I drove to my condo complex during my lunch hour. I'd finished decorating the den last night and Greg, my client, I reminded myself for the 100th time, loved the final result. When he thanked me, his eyes had been full of emotion. He'd praised each one of my choices, which touched me deeply. Now we were waiting to see what Jenna thought. Although I assured Greg he didn't need to attend since he'd worked all night at the hospital, he refused to miss the photo shoot. He told me he had the next 2 nights off work, so I felt better that he wouldn't be trying to save lives in the emergency room while exhausted. As Greg puttered in the kitchen, I rose from his couch and started pacing. What if Jenna hated the look? Sure, Greg and I loved the den. The room had been cold and plain before. Now it felt warm and welcoming, making me want to curl up with a novel in the antique accent chair I'd found at a consignment store. My forehead throbbed. What if Jenna thought classical cozy felt boring? I'd added a framed poster of Vincent van Gogh's 12 sunflowers in a vase for color and fun. What if she preferred flowers in the kitchen? In my opinion, flowers filled every room with happiness, but it's not like I had a degree to validate my taste. That was why Jenna's opinion meant so much to me. My palms turned clammy, and I rubbed them against my blue slacks. Greg sauntered from the kitchen to the living room and handed me a mug. Peppermint tea. Should help calm your nerves. Is it that obvious I'm freaked out? I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, gratefully. His support meant a lot, especially since I wasn't used to having someone take care of me. Waiting for Jenna feels like slow torture. He rubbed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me to the sofa. You transformed my den, Ginger. You have an amazing touch. Just ask the skipper. The den is now his favorite room, but he has to suffer with my bedroom until after the interview so he doesn't get in the way. Well, if the kitten likes the improvements, then I'm set, I joked. My belly tightened with knots as I dropped down on the couch and tried to deep breathe. No big deal. It was only my entire future. Knock, knock, knock. My eyes flew to the front door. I'll get it. Greg's brows came together in confusion when I didn't move. He gestured with his hand and nodded toward the door. Want to me too? My throat went dry, my legs were lead, and I lifted my lashes. Yes, please. I watched in terror as Greg answered the door and greeted Jenna, whose long blonde hair tumbled over her shoulders. Get a grip, Ginger. Taking a deep breath, I stood, then pasted on a smile. Hi, Jenna. How are you? I'd stood and I'd formed words. Props for improvement. Jenna rushed in and shook my hand, a large leather bag slung over her shoulder. Nice to see you again. I'm in a bit of a hurry. I have to be clear across town for another appointment shortly. The den was this way, right? Talk about getting down to business. My heart thudded in my chest. Yes, I said, taking the lead, then stopping outside the door to the den as she slipped inside. Every muscle in my body clenched as I twisted my hair around and around, waiting for the verdict. Seconds ticked by, feeling like eons. Wow. Jenna rotated around the room, holding her arms out. What a transformation. The room has so much life now. She removed her camera from the bag, took off the lens cap, and started taking shots. Click, click, click. Love the Van Gogh. Really adds some extra energy in here. My stomach uncoiled, and I whooshed out the breath I'd been holding. She liked it. She really did. Feeling almost euphoric, I glanced over at Greg, who mouthed, "I told you so," when Jenna wasn't looking. I bit my lip and smiled, loving that he had so much faith in me. Adrenaline rushed through my body as if I'd just finished a 5-mile run. After Jenna finished taking pictures, she asked about my motivations for each of the changes I'd made. Then she turned to Greg, touching his arm. This is your home. How do you feel about the changes Ginger made? My stomach churned as I gaped at her hand on his forearm. Was physical touch really necessary during an interview? Every part of me screamed to remove her hand myself. Not that I was territorial or anything. I couldn't be happier. He casually leaned against the wall, moving slightly away from her in a way that was almost unnoticeable. Unless, of course, you were staring obsessively like I was. Ginger captured my personality perfectly. She nodded, clasped her hands together, then turned my way. This room feels very personal to me, too. Like you know him well. Were you friends before the auction? Memories of the night we'd met washed over me. Each dance when he'd held me, every word we'd spoken, every moment we'd touched. We had only met once. His eyes locked on mine. Sometimes that's all it takes. Heat sizzled between us so thick I wanted to fan myself, and I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. For a moment, I forgot Jenna was in the room. Truthfully, I would have had trouble remembering my name right now. Yowzers. Ginger's very talented. He winked at me, then shifted his eyes to Jenna. I'm eager to see what she does next. As am I. A dimple formed in her cheek, and she adjusted the strap on her shoulder. Thank you both so much. In addition to the charity and the auction, I feel like the personal side of the interview will attract a reader's interest. I inhaled, trying to catch my breath and form coherent words. We're happy to help founding friendships. It's a wonderful organization. Definitely. With a final glance at me, Greg walked Jenna to the entryway and held the door open for her. She turned back around. May I get a few of your business cards, Ginger? I'd love to recommend you to my friends who'd mentioned remodeling their homes. Business cards? I wanted to kick myself for not being prepared with them. My heart stopped. Yes, of course. I'll bring some on Tuesday when you come back for your next round of photos. She smiled, then glanced around the living room. I can't wait to see what you do with the space in here. You really have a unique flair. I think the step-by-step interview will be intriguing as well. Have a great weekend. Bye. Bye. As soon as the door closed, my gaze flew to Greg. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling in the most adorable way. I'd say that puts your worries to rest. Greg? A jolt of electricity zapped through me, either from the sweet way he was looking at me, the excitement from Jenna's approval, or both. Whatever the reason, something came over me, and I hurled myself up into his arms. He held me tight, and elation flowed through me, as if a crack in my life had just been filled. I felt whole. There was no other way to explain the emotions buzzing through me. And there was definitely no way to explain why, when Greg pulled back and gazed down at me, I lifted up onto my tippy toes and pressed my lips against his. He was still for a moment, as if I'd surprised him. I definitely shocked myself. Then his fingers speared through my hair and his lips captured mine. Tingles radiated across my chest, making me feel like I was floating. When his mouth opened, I didn't hesitate, pressing my tongue against his. We tasted each other hungrily, savoring, as if we'd been waiting a long time for this. And we had. I'd wanted to kiss Greg that very first night we'd met. Dancing with him, laughing with him, and talking together at the diner had felt easy. Natural. And right. Locked in his embrace right now, his mouth devouring mine completely, only one question plagued me. Why hadn't we been doing this the whole time? Emergency room doctor. Big family. The reminders flashed in my head like giant warning signs. A jolt zapped through me, putting me on red alert. Quickly, I pulled away and stepped back. Fighting to catch my breath, my hand covered my mouth, and I stared up into Greg's heavy-lidded eyes. What had I done? He moved toward me. Ginger. I'm sorry. I shook my head, still stunned, and spoke through numb fingers. I don't know what came over me. A line formed between his brows. I'm not sorry. No matter how amazing it felt with Greg, and amazing didn't begin to describe the way the guy kisses, wowzers, a relationship between us would never work out. Pursuing anything with him would be completely impractical. I needed to be rational. For both of our sakes. Regretfully, I lifted my handbag off of his coffee table, then slipped it over my shoulder. I should get back to work. Standing in front of me, he slipped his hands into his pockets. Talk to me. My heart pounded against my ribcage. My lunch break's over. I need to go. A flicker of hurt washed across his face, but he walked me to the door. Once I slipped outside, I spun around to face him, and he leaned against the door jamb. His jaw muscles twitched, but he didn't say anything. Oh, the awkwardness. I sucked in a breath, wanting to depart on a friendlier note. I'm relieved Jenna's happy with the den. I hope the rest of the project goes just as well. He peered down at me, his expression serious. Go out with me tonight. My stomach fluttered while a dull ache rocked through my chest. A huge part of me begged to give in and say yes. I already have a date, I said lamely. A date I wasn't jazzed to go on, but still. No matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't lose my head. It would only hurt more later. Thanks for being here today. Your support means a lot to me. I'll work on the living room this weekend. You're the boss. His eyes darkened, then he closed the door. My heart squeezed, but there was nothing I could do. There was no point in going out with Greg when it could never progress to anything more. I'd slipped by kissing him, which made me feel bad enough. I couldn't let that happen again, no matter how tempting. Are you telling me I'm fired? My jaw dropped open, and my grip tightened on the armrests of the chair across from Caitlin's desk. Caitlin shook her head emphatically. Getting laid off is not the same as being fired. You'll receive glowing recommendations, and we're giving you 2 weeks of severance pay, plus all of the vacation and sick leave you've accumulated. My face went numb as I leaned forward. But the bottom line is that I no longer work here. I need to clean out my office and go home. Right? She pressed her lips together. I wouldn't put it so harshly. But yes. My brows furrowed. How long have you known about this? She raised both palms in the air. Rich just told me this morning. I didn't want to say anything to you earlier because you had that interview with Sacramento Living at lunch. I crossed my arms. That's very considerate of you. This wasn't my decision, Ginger. You have to believe me. She clasped her hands together. Rich is cutting costs across the board. You're not the only one we had to lay off today. That got my attention. Who else? We let Melinda Morgan go this morning. She'd been with the company for years. Her expression crumpled, and she rubbed her hands over her face. This is the worst part of my job. I hate it. At least you have a job. I tossed back. How would I pay my bills? I didn't have jack in savings. Mary Ann only paid her half of the rent when her mood struck. My sight blurred and I yanked the sides of my hair. I was so screwed. How did Melinda take it? Who knows? She leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. She acted just like always, perfectly put together and poised. Unlike me, who was pulling out wads of hair and copping an attitude with one of my good friends. I sighed, dropping my hands in my lap. I know this isn't your fault. I'm just thrown, I guess. I've never been fired before. Laid off. Her voice was gentle. I totally understand. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I slumped back in my chair. You can erase this day so it never happened. Well, not the entire day. Jenna loved how I designed Greg's den. She said I have a unique flair and took a gazillion photos for her magazine article. And that kiss with Greg will be forever etched in my mind. I don't know if now is the right time to say this. She bit her lip, then eyed me cautiously. But maybe this will end up being a good thing. Maybe it will help you make the transition into decorating faster. Except that I have no clients. Then I remembered that Jenna had asked for my business cards. Guess I needed to have more printed than I thought. I have a lot of thinking to do. She nodded, then handed me a white envelope. Your final check. I picked up the envelope, gripping it between my fingers. This was a nice place to work, for a while anyway. It's rapidly going downhill. She curled her upper lip. Who do you think is getting all of your job duties? Better too much work than no income. I gave her a meaningful look, then sighed. I suppose if I had to get canned, better that it come from a friend. Although Caitlin's sympathetic gaze made me want to make her feel better. What a mess. I inhaled deeply, slapped my hands on my thighs, and stood. I wonder why Rich is making all of these changes. Not that it concerns me anymore. No idea. Caitlin rose to her feet, then skirted around to the front of the desk, her delicate features downcast. She pulled me into a hug. I'm really sorry. Thanks. With my chin on Caitlin's shoulder, my head began to spin. Greg's kiss circled my mind. Jenna's praise. Getting fired. I'd worked so hard to keep my life organized and practical. Then, in one day, a tornado had hit, and everything was spinning out of control. My eyes burned. I'll be okay. I know. She patted my back, pulled away, then sniffled. Do you want help collecting your things? Sure. Sucking in a deep breath, I dabbed the corners of my eyes. That would be great. Thanks. My legs felt like bricks as I trudged to my soon-to-be former office. I'd been fired, canned, kicked to the curb. This totally threw me off guard. Suddenly, my nerve-wracking decorating project had become a do-or-die situation. The pressure was on to make it more sensational than ever in order to acquire clients. Fast. If not, I'd be out on the street. Although I'd had the strong urge to waste the rest of Friday afternoon in bed with the covers over my head, man, that sounded good right about now, I forced myself to drive to the office supply store and purchase blank business cards. When I got home, I carried the framed pictures from my ex-office into my condo and set them against the wall next to the couch. Then I popped 2 aspirin, hoping to get rid of the raging headache I'd acquired, and plodded to the corner of my bedroom, where my tiny desk sat next to my easel. Needing an original logo for my business cards, I picked up a piece of charcoal and sketched design after design, trying to come up with something I liked. After several hours, I drafted a bunch of squiggly lines that didn't add up to anything remotely appealing. How could my muse desert me at a time like this? Suddenly, I heard a quick rap on my door before it burst open. Mary Ann sailed in, snapping bubblegum. You're home early. Yep. I set the charcoal down, rubbed my black fingertips together, then turned to face my sister. She wore her honey blonde hair pulled back in a bun, a pink blouse tucked into gray slacks, and looked business casual, just like she dressed for the office every day. She held down a good job in property management, and it suddenly burned me up that she couldn't be bothered to pay rent every month. I needed to check my tally to see how much she owed me by now, assuming I could count that high. What gives? She plopped down across my bed, then propped her chin on her fists. And what's with all those pictures in the living room? Are you redecorating? They're from my office at work. I stood, scuffled into my bathroom, and pulled the faucet on. My former work. I got fired today. What? Her shout came from the other room, but seconds later she appeared right next to me, waving a stack of envelopes. You can't lose your job. We've got bills and I'm short on cash. Electricity, water, internet. She flipped through the envelopes, then smacked the top one. This one is due by next week. Maybe you could apologize for whatever you screwed up on. Great idea. I placed my hand on her shoulder, then tilted my head with a mocking grin. I'll just tell him we need high-speed internet. That will get him to hire me back right away. At least I'm trying to come up with ideas. She brought her hands to her chest. I don't want to have to take cold showers in the dark because you blew something at work. What did you do wrong anyway? Irritation washed over me. This was so typical of Mary Ann. All she could think about was how my sad situation affected her. Thanks for your faith in me, but I didn't mess up. I pumped liquid soap onto my fingers, then rubbed them together under the warm water. The company's cutting costs, so they laid me off. She stared at me wide-eyed. What are you going to do? Ah. The question I'd been worrying about since Caitlin had given me the axe. I have no idea, I said, turning the water off and drying my hands on a towel. I'm sure you'll think of something. She followed me back to my bedroom, leaned back on my bed, then smiled. At least you have a hot date tonight. That should be a nice distraction. Huh? I groaned. I totally forgot about Trenton. But I definitely remembered Greg's kiss. The feel of his arms around me, his mouth ravaging mine. Shiver. No matter how hard I'd fought my attraction, there was only one man who interested me. The thought of going out with another guy felt wrong. I'm going to cancel my date. She gave me a knowing look. Because you have the hots for Greg. He's an even better distraction. Are you finally going to stop overthinking everything and go for it? No, I said, but my heart rate kicked up a notch just thinking about it. I need a paycheck, not a distraction. Must be fun to have your carefree life. She shrugged, then popped to her feet. It's Friday night. Liam's taking me to this new club that just opened. Yes, he actually made it to date number 2. I'll admit, it had something to do with how hot he looks with his goatee. Have a good time. I dropped down into the chair at my desk. Great. Mary Ann would be out rocking the dance floor, while I'd be struggling to invent a creative logo design. As always, I chose to act responsibly while she got to act on her whims. This didn't exactly give me the warm fuzzies. Mary Ann hesitated by my door, eyeing me up and down. You look really depressed, Ginger. My brows furrowed. Gee, you think? I didn't mean it like that. She rolled her eyes, then propped a hand on her hip. Come dancing with Liam and me tonight. That's sure to snap you out of your funk. Great idea in theory, but I had work to do. Besides, dancing would only remind me of Greg anyway. I gestured toward my drawings. Thanks for the offer, but I have a project I'm working on. You have fun though. I'll be around for a few more hours if you change your mind, she said, then sauntered away. Her invitation actually touched me. She may be a flake, but she tried to take care of me in her own way, and I loved that about her. I glanced at the clock. 5:30. Since Trenton was supposed to pick me up at 7, I needed to call him pronto. Taking a deep breath, I dialed his phone number. Canceling our date was all kinds of awkward, but I managed to stumble through it. He mentioned his ex again, which confirmed he probably thought about her as much as I thought of Greg. But he was trying to be rational about things. Just like I was. Too bad we both seemed miserable. Maybe I should listen to Mary Ann, stop thinking so much, and go for it with Greg. She threw caution to the wind all of the time, and she was the epitome of happiness. The idea enticed me, but reason took over. I had no job. My livelihood rode on this magazine article, generating clients for me. I needed to go upstairs and decorate, but that would be mega uncomfortable considering the debacle I'd created earlier by kissing Greg. Then a terrible thought sliced through my brain. Greg was an incredibly hot doctor, with an amazing personality to boot. What if he'd asked someone else out tonight? What if she showed up at his condo while I was painting? The idea made me sick to my stomach. But I had no choice. I needed to impress Jenna like never before. Gritting my teeth, I picked up my phone and drafted a text to Greg. Mind if I come up and paint? I have your key if you're not home. I shut my eyes and held my breath. He was probably out with some gorgeous doctor from work who was gainfully employed and couldn't wait to pop out a dozen of his babies. I wondered if the skipper would like her. Ping. Ping. Squeezing one eye open, I slid my finger across the screen. Not a problem. I'm here and the door's unlocked. I let out the breath I'd been holding, then typed back, thanks. I'll be right up. I pulled my long hair back into a ponytail, then changed into my painting clothes, a white tank and old black yoga pants. Then a terrible thought occurred to me. Just because Greg was home didn't mean he was alone. Chapter 6. 10 minutes later, I trudged upstairs to Greg's condo. What were the odds that a gorgeous, single doctor would be home alone on a Friday night? Oh, so slim. Seeing him with another woman would be torture. Why did Greg have to win my auction item? Was the universe exercising a sick sense of humor at my expense? At least Greg was quieter than my previous upstairs neighbor. I suppose that should count for something. I stepped onto the welcome doormat that I'd picked out, a gorgeous camel brown straw rectangle with chocolate brown script and green bay leaves that reminded me of Greg. Actually, the leaves reminded me of a dream I'd had about the two of us running together on a forest trail at sunset, smiling and happy. Clearly, the mat represented my inability to accept what was healthy for me. Greg had said the door was unlocked, but I knocked anyway. I mean, did I want to walk in and find him cuddling on the couch with some random woman? No. The front door opened and there he stood, looking incredibly hot in gray athletic shorts and a short-sleeved shirt. Not exactly date wear. Maybe he'd been working out? Hopefully alone. Sucking in a breath, I forced a smile. Hello. Hello yourself. He held the door wide so I could slip past him. The door was unlocked. Was it? I used my most innocent tone as I moseyed inside, and he shut the door behind me. I scanned his living room for any sign of a date. No woman's jacket hanging on the antique coat rack I'd brought over yesterday. No lipstick-stained wineglass. No heady perfume. And most importantly, no woman. Are you alone? I finally blurted, the suspense tormenting me. No. He smirked, seeming pleased by my question. The skipper's here. Phew. Only the skipper. That was a load off. Even though Greg deserved to find a nice woman to settle down with, I sure didn't need to catch the show. As if recognizing his name, the little gray kitten came prancing into the living room, then hooked his neck around my ankle. Mew. Mew. Hey boy. I bent down and scratched behind his ear. He made a purring sound that vibrated against my hand, and he seemed happy to see me. Ah, you love that. Don't you? Greg watched us for a moment, then slid his hands into his pockets. Would you like a glass of wine? No thanks. I stood, snuggling the sweet kitten, who kept burrowing his soft cheek against the back of my hand. After the day I've had, it might put me to sleep. His brows came together. Everything all right? I got fired, I blurted, before I had time to consider keeping such personal information to myself. Whatever. Not like my being canned was a big secret or anything. Oh man. He came toward me, lifted my hand, and held it in his own. What happened? Laid off, actually. Cost cutting, I think. Butterflies danced in my belly from the feel of his skin against mine, dimming the horror of losing my job slightly. His thumb caressed the back of my hand, shooting tingles up my arms, and my breath caught in my throat. They combined my position with someone else's. I'm sorry. He gazed at me, wearing a concerned expression. Then his brows rose, and he gestured toward the kitchen. You sure you don't want that glass of wine? Alarms exploded in my head. My gaze whipped to his, searching. Was drinking how he dealt with stress? Did he have bottles of scotch on hand to get through his demanding job? Or was I being majorly paranoid? So many possibilities, and sadly, none of them were shiny bright beacons of light. I shook my head. Thanks for the offer, but I have a ton of painting to get through. I slipped my hand away from his, immediately missing the warmth of his touch. I'd better get started. I'll already be up late as it is. The crease between his brows remained. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I nodded, then ambled down the hallway, setting the skipper on the carpet outside the bathroom door. I'm going to start prepping to paint, I called out, then stepped into the bathroom. When I flipped on the lights, my gaze darted around the room, and my mouth dropped open. What the? When I'd left earlier today, the bathroom had been a generic white. Now, every inch was covered with the rich, olive green paint I'd left here. Surprise! Greg leaned against the doorjamb, watching my stunned expression with a satisfied look on his face. I fought to close my mouth, which felt like a 10-ton rock. You painted this yourself? Yep. He crossed one ankle over the other. It was a good distraction from the pain of your earlier rejection. I almost blurted out that I'd felt the pain of my earlier rejection, too. I still did. Greg, I hugged my belly, dumbfounded. I couldn't believe he'd taken the time to do my job for me. I'm speechless. He shook his head, the corner of his mouth turning up. You haven't even seen the other bathroom yet. I gaped at him a moment, then darted through the master bedroom and into the master bathroom. Olive green. The entire room. Unbelievable. I heard him come up behind me, and I spun around. Why did you paint the bathrooms yourself? To make you happy. He tilted his head, giving me a side glance that sent shivers through me. Wish I could bottle your expression. I'd love to see that smile every day. I shook my head, unable to believe what he'd done. For me. Especially when he'd thought I was going out with another guy tonight. It made no sense. You're crazy. Must be. He stepped forward, that crease reappearing between his brows. What happened to your date tonight? I backed up against the counter, then averted my eyes. I canceled. He stopped in front of me, lifting my chin until my gaze met his. Why? Staring up at him, with only inches between us, I said, it didn't feel right, so I didn't want to lead him on. His fingertips brushed my jawline. No man could accuse you of leading him on. I don't know about that, I whispered. After all, I'd kissed him this afternoon, and that was pretty much all I wanted to do right now. His gaze dropped to my lips, as if he were thinking the same thing I was. His mouth lingered only inches away, an invisible force tugged at me, drawing me toward him. Unable to resist, I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. As soon as my mouth met his, my heart raced and my worries disappeared. All that remained was Greg and me in this moment. Olive green walls closed around me, holding me like comforting arms, and the world felt warmer. Fuller. When his mouth opened, his tongue tasted mine, sending electric darts rippling through me. Oh my! All I could think of was more. Our mouths melted together in deep, endless kisses, and endorphins coursed through me like they did during a long run at sunset. My fingers skimmed over his muscular shoulders, up his neck, then threaded into his soft hair, and I pulled him even closer, unable to get enough. My legs turned liquid, but Greg held me steady against him. He trailed soft kisses along my jawline, then paused close to my ear and whispered, "Sunshine." Tingles raced through me. The connection between us gripped every cell in my body. I breathed in his scent, fresh soap mixed with paint fumes. The stringent paint smell suddenly yanked me from the heavenly haze, bringing back the stress of bills, finding income, and all that rode on this decorating project. And of course, my certainty that Greg and I could never be together. I angled back, lightheaded, and blinked up at him. Breathing hard, he brushed his fingers along my cheek, then leaned his forehead against mine. Remind me to paint for you more often. I wanted to smile, but pressure mounted inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. This was really sweet of you, but I need to keep working. I have a lot more to do. If this article doesn't go well, if I don't get this advertisement for my business, I don't know what I'll do. Then let's get to it. He pressed his mouth to my temple, then laced his fingers through mine and led me into the hallway. What's next on the agenda? Biting my lip, I had to admit the offer was tempting. Furniture shopping. But you're not getting the way this works. You're the client, so I'm supposed to do the work for you. Instead of relenting, he flashed a grin. We both know it's customary to keep the client happy. What makes me happy is being with you. Looks like you're not getting rid of me. Oh man. He'd beat me by using the most basic rule in customer service. Whatever the client says. I relented, then glanced down at my paint-splattered outfit. But I have to change first. That's approved. He opened the door, but before I could slip out, he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me until my knees turned to noodles. Once. Twice. 3 times. I'll be down to pick you up shortly. I lifted my lashes, feeling dazed. Okay. As I hurried down the stairs, I had to hold the railing to keep steady. I knew I'd messed up again by kissing Greg. And I should have stood firm and not let him come furniture shopping. I really did know all of this. But right now, I felt too freaking amazing to care. As I swept my paintbrush down one corner of Greg's living room walls Sunday afternoon, I wanted to pinch myself to make sure I was awake. I'd always maintained that help was overrated. But after this weekend, I'd gained a new perspective. With Greg, everything I needed to get done for the condo had been accomplished faster and had been more fun. Thinking about our war over picking out the new sofa and love seat had my belly doing somersaults. I'd brought a list of sofa options to the furniture store that would work visually with the space, but he refused to listen to my researched ratings on customer feedback. Instead, he bounced from couch to couch, insisting on picking whichever sofa he could best imagine watching a Ben Stiller movie on. So not rational. But Greg had won the argument. He was the client after all, and I'd somehow promised to watch some movie called Zoolander with him, even though I hadn't looked up the reviews yet. In my defense, his delicious kisses had made my brain fuzzy again. Another exciting revelation occurred when my muse returned last night. For my logo, I'd sketched a simple white antique chair with a paintbrush hovering over the seat's cushion, turning it red like a magic wand. A splash of angel dust exploded around the paint bristles, finishing the logo off. I also purchased the domain name for my upcoming website, assigned an email address, and printed 500 business cards. Nothing was going to stop me now. Ping. Ping. Your phone's beeping in the den. Greg entered from the hallway, then picked up a paintbrush to join me. Thanks. I considered ignoring the phone call, but climbed down the ladder and hurried to the den. I didn't want to worry my friends by not answering. I'd already received calls from Jill, Caitlin, Rach, Ellen, Kristen, and a handful of others checking to make sure I wasn't going off the deep end after being handed my walking papers from Woodward Systems Corporation. Who was even left to phone me now? The new janitorial staff? My cell screen showed 4 new text messages from Mary Ann, 1 missed call from my mother, and another missed call from a Sacramento number I didn't recognize. I scanned my texts first. Mary Ann, you know how you got the boot at work? That wasn't top secret, right? Mary Ann, Mom is sort of freaking out. You need to call and reassure her you've got a plan. You do have a plan, right? We need something and it's called money. Mary Ann, are you ignoring me? I'm starting to get that impression. I may have told Mom, Dad, Liam, and the guy who edges the plants out front that you got terminated, but only 'cause I have nobody else to vent to. Why won't you call me? I'm so upset, I almost canceled my facial. Mary Ann, don't misdirect your anger. Your boss is the dodo brain. Not me. Dig? My jaw tightened. Unbelievable. Why didn't Mary Ann just broadcast my dismissal on the news? And how does she have money for a facial, but not rent? So not logical. I mean, I could use a facial right about now. Not to mention a manicure. Painting sure wreaked havoc on the nails. I tapped the voicemail icon on my phone, then dialed my password. Ginger, this is your mother. Mary Ann told me you were fired on Friday and we're disappointed you didn't call us right away and that we had to find out through your sister, who is completely distraught. You know how sensitive she is. I've gone through the job listings in the paper, and you'll be pleased to know there are opportunities for an office manager. With your degree and experience, you're a qualified candidate. We'll send out your resumes on Monday and hope they don't ask too many questions about why you were let go. I hope it didn't have anything to do with the new signature procedure for the office supplies, which you were complaining to me about earlier in the week. You know, there's a logical reason behind every business decision. Either way, setbacks are only stepping stones, as long as you don't dawdle and apply for a new position right away. Call me when you get this. Bye. My forehead throbbed, and I deleted the message, wishing I could erase it from my memory just as easily. She had the nerve to spout about office manager positions? Doesn't the woman remember how bored out of my mind I was at my job? Does she want me to be miserable and comatose again? Next, a monotone voice announced I had one more new message. Hi, Ginger. This is Liam, Mary Ann's friend. Well, more than friend. Although I've asked her out for a third time, and she hasn't quite said yes. Even though we had a great evening dancing on Friday, she said she needs to think about a third date. Something about rules and strikes. I don't know. Anyway, she's worried you're upset with her, so it would make her happy if you could give her a call. Also, if you would put in a good word for me, I'd appreciate it. I have tickets for a wine train in Napa, and I know we'd have a good time. Bye now. I pressed the delete button on my phone. Why was everyone worried about comforting my blabbermouth sister? I was the one who'd gotten fired, not her. There was no way I could cover rent, Mary Ann's half and mine without a salary. My severance and vacation would only last a month. After that, we were going to be hosed. Unless I nailed this project and obtained some clients. Talk about pressure. Every muscle in my body tightened with tension. I set my cell down on the chest next to the kitty statue, inhaling deep supposed to be calming but wasn't working breaths. I'd call Mary Ann later. Definitely not now, or I'd surely go off on her, which would ruin the relaxation benefits of her facial. My gaze fell to the framed photo on Greg's wooden chest, sitting between the bronze kitten and the lamp. The man in the photo was handsome, and a little boy sat on his lap. In the photo, he peered down at the kid with raised brows, and his hand was frozen over the child's belly as if he'd been tickling him when the shot had been taken. The boy's almond brown eyes lit up, and he wore a huge gap-toothed smile. Greg. Warmth filled my chest. I ran my fingers over his adorable boy face. He had a mouth full of straight white teeth now, but his smile hadn't changed. I found myself wishing I'd known him as a child. I'd bet he had been just as sweet. Everything all right? Greg's voice echoed from behind me. I jumped, startled, then slapped my hand over my pounding heart. I didn't hear you come in. Sorry. He stepped closer, rubbing at a stripe of wet paint on his arm and smearing it. You were gone a while. Just wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm fine. I set the frame back down, embarrassed that I'd been caught fondling his childhood photo. I fixed my gaze on his. Your dad? Yes. Something flickered in his eyes, but I wasn't sure what. Your cheeks are flushed. Are you upset? Yes. No. I shook my head, trying to decide how much to tell him. I got 4 texts from Mary Ann. She's told everyone, including my mother, that I lost my job. Now my mom's railroading me into finding a new office position, which I don't want. Like I don't have enough problems right now. He reached for my hand. Can I help? I stared up at him. His gentle eyes tugged at something inside me. Part of me wanted to confide in him, but what would be the point? He'd still be an emergency room doctor, stressed and busy, who wanted children one day. Not a match made in a condo complex. I swallowed, glancing away. I should get back to work. Ginger. He lifted my chin, so I was looking up at him. Talk to me. I'm here for you. Yeah, for the moment. But I knew what the future would hold. Long work hours. Broken promises. I closed my eyes. We have to stop this. Us. There's no point. There's every point. His eyes heated, his fingers brushing my cheek, leaving a tingling wake across my skin. A lifetime of points, Ginger. Since the night we met, I haven't stopped thinking about you. I blinked. I haven't stopped thinking about you either. His mouth captured mine in a warm, sweet kiss, as if to confirm what we'd both admitted. Then he pulled back. You told me you don't do long-distance relationships, but I sensed something more. I'm here now, and you're still pushing me away. Why? My throat tightened. I glanced down at the photo of him with his dad, thought about his mom remodeling his kitchen as a housewarming gift, then I shook my head. I didn't grow up in the perfect family like you did. His jaw tensed. How do you mean? My dad was an emergency room doctor, I blurted. Just like that, a leash inside me broke free, and the words began tumbling out. He worked long hours. We hardly ever saw him. And when we did, he was hard and sad and miserable. My throat constricted. I fought my burning eyes, but a hot tear escaped, sliding down my cheek. Losing patience tore my dad up inside. He talked about the losses with my mom at first, but later he turned to alcohol. Scotch. Ginger. He swiped my cheek with the back of his hand. I'm sorry for your dad. And for you. But I'm not like him. Not yet. My teeth clenched. He changed his career, moved into hospital administration, but the memories haunt him. So does the bottle. He's promised to go to rehab many times, but it never sticks. His eyes sparked with recognition. Your living room painting. He's the one who broke his promise to you. My jaw nearly dropped. I can't believe you remember me saying that. Sunshine, when will you realize I listen to everything you say? He squeezed my hand, then his eyes clouded. I didn't have the childhood you seem to think I did. I glanced at the perfect father-son photo, then my eyes grew large. What do you mean? His facial muscles tightened. My dad died when I was 9 years old. The air left my lungs, and I struggled to form words. I am so sorry. He nodded slightly. He had a heart attack while I was kicking the ball around in our backyard. My mom had gone to the grocery store, so I'm the one who found him. My stomach twisted. That must have been awful. His brown eyes flooded with emotion. I didn't know CPR, so I blamed myself. Took me a long time to accept there wasn't anything I could have done. His temple throbbed, and he blew out a breath, almost as if he were reliving it. Then, early one morning, I watched the sunrise. I stood completely still, mesmerized. What happened? The darkness faded, colors appeared in the sky, and the sun rose up to meet the day. His gaze latched onto mine. That's when I knew I wanted to be a doctor. That any man I saved could be a dad going home to his son. My eyes burned from what I knew too well. You can't save everyone. No. He pulled me closer to him, fingered a loose strand of hair that had fallen against my cheek. Those are the mornings I need the sunrise the most, because there will always be another day. Another person I can send home to their family. I bit my lip, pieces coming together. You're right. You're not like my dad. He shook his head. I'm here for you. If you'll let me be. My heart tugged, squeezed, the pain unbearable. Thank you for opening up to me. I'm here for you too, as a friend. Ginger? I don't want to have children, I said, the truth finally out. He appeared stunned a moment. I hope the skipper didn't hear you say that. I'm serious. My voice steeled. I had to be resolute for Greg's sake, so I didn't lead him on. I'm not right for you. I don't want kids. I'm not going to stick around and destroy your dreams. He appeared unimpressed. Well, you weren't right about my job or my childhood. You've been wrong about a lot of things. What makes you think you're not wrong about this too? I sucked in a breath, deciding to be completely honest. The thought of being responsible for a child terrifies me. I can barely take care of myself. Maybe life wouldn't be so hard if you stopped trying to take care of everyone else. He tucked his chin, his voice softening. Or if you let people help you. Like me. I practically had to force you to let me paint my own condo. People help each other, and maybe you're not used to that. But that's what people do when they care about each other. I stared him in the eye. I could never give you the life you want, and you deserve to have everything. I hope we can still be friends, but I'm not going to argue about this anymore. My decision is final. Hurt flickered across his face, then his features hardened. You can only push somebody away so many times before they don't come back. My chest went hollow. Painting together obviously isn't going to make this easier. I'll come back tomorrow and finish up. Alone. You're the boss. He walked me to the door, pulled it open for me to slip through, then he hesitated. Of course, I'll be your friend. I'm always here if you need me. Me too. His words were comforting, but his eyes were cold and distant. Good night, Greg. Goodbye, Ginger, he said, then closed the door. Pain sliced through me, burning across my chest. Suddenly, I felt very alone, which was what I'd wanted all along. Just myself to take care of, and no one else. But now I didn't feel self-reliant, I felt like I'd lost something precious. Make that someone precious. Chapter 7. When I left Greg's house, I knew things had ended the only way they could, but my heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest, and I honestly didn't think I could feel any worse. I was wrong. As soon as I stepped inside my condo, I saw my mother sitting on the couch next to Mary Ann. My mom stood. Well, there you are. I assume your cell phone is broken or you've been mugged. At least I hope there's a good reason why you haven't called your mother when I've been worried sick about you. We both have been. Mary Ann's face scrunched up in her infamous pout, and she crossed her arms. Didn't you get my texts? Yes. I'd read her texts, then Greg had opened up to me about his dad. His words spun through my head, making me dizzy. I'd had to push him away, but that didn't make losing him easy. Far from it. Nausea rolled up inside me, and I held onto the back of the couch for support. I've been upstairs working. Mom's mouth pursed. Working on what? I told you about Ginger's project when we were fabric shopping this morning for that quilt you're making. Mary Ann curled her legs underneath her, then gaped at me in faux horror. If I have to look at another roll of floral patterns, I might set it on fire. The charity project. Mom snapped her fingers. You're being interviewed about the home you're bringing up to date. Right? My brows knitted in confusion. She actually seemed excited for me, which I knew wasn't possible. A career in art did not equal stability. I'd heard these words come out of her mouth a million times. I was painting the living room walls Urban Cafe, which is a basic beige I'm using throughout the condo. I dropped my handbag on the sofa table, then inched closer to her, stunned that she was showing interest in my creative interests for the first time in my life. This weekend, I picked out furniture with my client, which will be delivered tomorrow. Now, I just need to finish painting the artwork to add a final splash of color. That sounds wonderful, dear. Mom's mouth spread into a grin, and she turned toward Mary Ann. She doesn't seem like she's 2 inches away from losing her mind. Mary Ann scoffed. You didn't see her on Friday. You can all stop being concerned, because I'm fine. I held my palms up. Nobody's going to lose anything. Except I'd lost Greg. By choice, for his own good. Arg. I shook my head, knowing my reasons weren't making any of this easier. I needed to think happy thoughts. Do you want to see the painting I'm working on for the project? Can't. Mary Ann jumped off the couch. I have an appointment with a bubble bath. Glad you're alive. Next time call. I watched her scamper off, Then I gestured toward my room and my mom followed me in there. We stopped next to the work in progress on my easel. It's not finished yet, but it will go in my client's living room. What do you think? It's colorful. Mom smiled at my painting as if she were admiring a puppy. But in truth, I came over to help you with your resume. We should send them out first thing tomorrow morning. My mouth opened in horror as I realized she was still talking about those office manager positions. Mom, I'm not applying to any of those jobs you told me about. I'm starting my own business. This woman from Sacramento Living is running a 6-page article on the condo I'm decorating, and she already wants to refer me to her friends. Art's a nice hobby, dear. Mom's mouth pursed. But you need a real job with a steady income. My blood hummed. Decorating is going to be my real job. My client loves my work. The woman doing the spread also loves my stuff. She said I have a unique flair. I'm doing this, Mom, whether you approve or not. Although my voice was firm, my insides turned to jelly. I'd never spoken up to my mom like that before. If I had, I would never have majored in business. Sigh. I can see you're determined. Her forehead wrinkled, like it did when she was deep in thought. The smart choice would be to apply for the sensible jobs I found at the same time you're preparing for this magazine article, though. That way you're exploring all possibilities in case one avenue doesn't go well. She did have a logical point. That makes sense. I could do that. Next, she approached my easel, studying my bright paint strokes. You know painting isn't my forte, but if you're trying to attract a broad range of clients, you might want to use more neutral colors. My stomach bubbled with worry. But the journalist loved the framed poster of Vincent van Gogh's 12 sunflowers in a vase I displayed in the den. Mom waved her hand in dismissal. That's because Van Gogh's paintings are famous. See what I'm saying about wide appeal? I bit my lip, nodding slowly. I just don't want his living room to feel boring. I mean, I'm using a beige base, but neutral colors are classic, not boring. She tapped her index finger against her chin. What about a nice landscape painting? That would please just about everyone. Don't you think? I immediately thought of the country landscape Rach had pointed out last week at Laurel Ann's. Definitely classic. I've seen a painting that could work. That sounds lovely. She checked her watch. It's getting late. Now that I know you're on track, I can actually sleep tonight. Remember, you need a stable job that's going to give you that steady paycheck every month. Yeah, I said, completely worn out from the day's events. After I walked my mom out and locked the front door, I returned to my easel. Even if I wouldn't use this painting in Greg's living room, I'd finish the abstract artwork for the fun of it. Except my muse had gone on hiatus. Again. Finally giving up, I crawled into bed, pulling the covers up over me. Greg had long gone to work by now, and I worried about the skipper being all alone upstairs. But he shouldn't be my concern. He was Greg's cat, not mine. Unfortunately, both of them were all I could think about. At noon on Tuesday, I hiked upstairs for my appointment with Jenna. It seemed painfully ironic that she'd kept the lunch hour appointment since I no longer had a job I needed to get back to. Not that she knew that, but still. When I'd come upstairs to finish painting yesterday, I'd arrived to find the job already complete. Even though I'd hurt Greg, he'd still wanted to help me. Such a great guy, and I knew he'd make some woman really happy. My belly roiled at the thought of him with another woman. Using the logical approach in order to appeal to the widest possible audience, I'd gone back to Laurel Ann's yesterday and purchased the country landscape painting. I also took my mom's advice and chose neutral colors for the accent pillows, area rug, and white silk flowers in a crystal vase. Simple and classic. I couldn't wait to see what Jenna thought. Greg, too, since he'd managed to disappear while I'd been decorating. Since I'd completed the bathrooms on Saturday, all that was left to decorate was the master bedroom. Not looking forward to spending time in Greg's bedroom. That seemed way too personal for our current relationship status. I reached the top of the stairs, took a deep breath, then lifted my hand to knock. Ginger. Jenna's voice came from behind me, her heels clipping up the stairs. How are you? Miserable. Anxious. Lonely. Fine, thanks. I forced a smile. I can't wait to hear what you think of how I decorated the bathrooms and living room. She gripped the strap on her shoulder. I've been looking forward to this all weekend. Did you remember to bring business cards? I have a coworker who's looking to remodel her entire house, 4,000 square feet, and I raved about how you decorated Greg's den. Hope fluttered inside me and my eyes welled. After all of these years, my dream job finally felt within reach. Thank you so much. I unzipped my purse, pulled out a small stack of business cards, and handed them to her. If you need more, let me know. Gorgeous design. Jenna studied the antique chair and magic paintbrush my muse had whipped out, before my muse had upped and deserted me. This is just so you. I flushed at the compliment, then knocked on Greg's door. My stomach clenched, nausea building up my throat. Did he hate me? He must like me a little, because he'd finished painting the living room. Although he probably just did that to be nice, and he had pointed out that it was his condo. The door opened, and there he stood right in front of me. Close enough to touch. Not that I would this time. My throat dried up, and I swallowed. Hi. Hi yourself. His tone was pleasant, but his eyes lacked the sparkle I'd grown used to seeing when he greeted me. Hi, Jenna. Come on in. I trailed behind, standing back, waiting for Jenna to rave about how all of her readers would love the room. Instead, I received silence. She wandered around the room, inspecting the vase, flowers, artwork, and everything I'd chosen. Still no comment. My gaze darted to Greg, but he leaned back against the wall, avoiding my stare. Anxiety built inside me, until I couldn't take it anymore. I approached Jenna. What do you think? Her mouth opened and closed, like a confused guppy. Honestly? It's not what I expected. Okay. I bobbed my head back and forth, trying to figure out if she meant that in a good way or a bad way. I wrung my hands together. I aimed to appeal to the majority of your readers, which is why I went with neutral colors this time. Oh. She nodded, her blonde ponytail bobbing up and down, before she started shaking her head. Maybe that's why it feels a bit generic. I'm not sure this will work for the article. Generic? My voice went flat, and my heart dropped to the floor. There was no way to spin the word generic into a positive review. I should know, because I'd been listening to people's opinions my entire life. Nobody ever received 5 stars for generic. Maybe I'd get a 2-star review, if I was lucky. Panic bubbled up inside my chest, and I so did not want to go back to an office job. Jenna hadn't made any move toward her camera, and I felt my beloved career slipping through my fingers. Why don't you check the bathrooms? Greg's voice seemed to come out of nowhere, and I wanted to tell him not show her any more of my work until I figured out where I went wrong. Right. She checked her watch in a way that seemed like she couldn't wait to get out of here. As soon as she disappeared around the corner, I glared at Greg. Would you please stop trying to help me? I can handle my own life, and you're only making things worse. She obviously hates. Wow. Jenna's high-pitched tone came from the hallway bathroom. This is beautiful. My stomach jumped in my throat, and I threw Greg an apologetic look. How did you know? Greg raised a brow at me. The skipper liked it. I guffawed, but then the corner of his mouth tipped up, telling me he was only kidding. He shook his head, then we joined Jenna, who was clicking off shots of the shower curtain, towels, rugs, and accessories. She also went photo-happy in the master bath. Before she left, I said, "I'd like to redo the living room to make it less generic. If you don't mind giving me another shot." "Sure. No problem. I'll look at it on Friday when I take pictures of the master bedroom," she said. As soon as Greg closed the door behind Jenna, I dropped onto his new, Ben Stiller-worthy couch and buried my face in my hands. She hated the room. Greg sat on the opposite end of the couch. I'm not surprised she didn't like it. My head snapped up, and I gaped at him. "Really?" He shook his head, resting his ankle on his opposite knee. "The living room isn't you. Or me, for that matter." I held my hands up. "How can that be? I designed it to have wide appeal." His brows came together. "Why would that be your goal?" "To be rational," I admitted, then decided to confess the whole thing. "I'd been painting something special for you, but my mom thought the decor should focus on a broader audience." "I'm touched you'd paint something for me yourself. Is your mom an artist?" I placed my palm on my forehead. "No, she majored in business and works in the accounting office of a clothing company." "So you're listening to her advice because—" I shrugged, feeling very lame. "That's what I've been doing my entire life." He sat forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "The way you decorate isn't rational. It's passionate, warm, and vibrant like you. Maybe it's time that you accept that you're fabulous and stand up for yourself." He thought I was all those things? That I was fabulous? He did. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. And suddenly I was filled with confidence. Maybe my decor and personality wouldn't suit everyone's tastes, but if my clients, like Greg, loved it, that's all that should matter. "You're right." I stood, every fiber of my being tightening like a fist. "It's way past time that I stood on my own." "Thanks, Greg." "Any time." He guided me to the door. "That's what friends are for. Just because we're not dating doesn't mean I won't be here for you." My stomach warmed, and a comforting feeling washed over me. Then I realized what time it was. "You work tonight. Why aren't you sleeping? This is important to you." He slipped his hands into his pockets, a dimple forming in his cheek. "Don't worry, I'll nap later." "Thank you." I gazed up at him, hoping he knew how much I meant by those two little words. Even though I'd blown this photo shoot, he still had faith in my artistic ability. He still had faith in me. Thank goodness Jenna was giving me a second chance with this article. Now I needed to impress her more than ever, by being true to myself. My mom knocked on our front door promptly at 6 o'clock Tuesday evening, exactly when I'd asked her to arrive. I pulled open the door, which hadn't been locked. Sigh. No matter how many times I asked my sister to think about safety, she still refused to listen to me. "What's wrong?" Mom strode in, removing her white blazer. "You said this was important. Did you find a new job?" "No." I shut the front door, then gestured toward the couch, where Mary Ann already sat with her feet propped up on the coffee table. "Thank you both for coming." Mary Ann huffed. "I don't get why I have to be here." "You will." I glanced over and saw her picking at a hangnail. "Can't you wait and do that in the bathroom?" "Gross." Mom gaped at us. "What's going on, Ginger? You're going to give me a heart attack." At the words heart attack, the air left my lungs, and my mind flashed to Greg's den photo of his dad and him. I could still see the pain written all over his face as he told me how his dad had died. And here I'd thought he'd had the perfect childhood. Wrong. I paced the area rug, my stomach bubbling with nausea as I fought my instincts to keep my mouth shut. I loved my mom and sister, needed to confess how I really felt, but I hated the thought of upsetting them. Even though it wasn't logical, part of me wanted to keep everything smooth and not risk hurting them. Not risk pushing them over the edge like my dad had gone. Taking a deep breath, I stopped. I have something to say to both of you. We're all ears. Mary Ann directed her gaze at me. But make it snappy, please. I have a date tonight with a guy they first met at the gym. My head tilted. What happened to Liam? Nothing. She adjusted her feet on the coffee table. He's nice, but you know me. Yes, I do. My voice tightened. And we're going to address that, too. Ginger your tone. Mom straightened her spine. What's come over you? I swiveled and faced her. Basically, you crushed my dreams. How did I do that? Mary Ann's pretty face scrunched into a pout. Not you. I nodded toward Mom. That comment was directed at Mom. I blew my decorating project today and almost lost a huge jump start to my business. Luckily, she's giving me another chance. Her brows furrowed. How is this my responsibility? I told you to send out your resumes and diversify. Exactly. I propped my hands on my hips, striking a pose that reminded me of Mary Ann. After I told you how much I dread working in an office. Why would you encourage me to get another job that makes me miserable? She raised her arms, looking frazzled. They call it work for a reason. It's not called fun. I dropped onto the couch next to her, my knees bouncing. But I told you how I wanted to start my own decorating business. I showed you the painting I was working on, and I was excited about it. You made me second-guess myself. So I took your advice and decorated a very neutral, inoffensive room. And Mary Ann circled her hand toward herself. Don't leave us in suspense. I threw my arms up. Jenna hated it. Yeah. Mary Ann nodded. Neutral sounds pretty vanilla. Shaking my head, I turned back to my mom, my eyes welling. Why can't you ever listen to me when I tell you I want to do something? Maybe working artistically isn't what you think is best, but that's what makes me happy. I need you to support my dreams. I deserve that. I've never heard you talk to me this way. My mom paused, gawking at me in disbelief. Then her forehead wrinkled, her eyes widened, and she gave a terse nod. You're right. Mary Ann said, come again, at the same time I said, really? She nodded. I'm always really cautious. I want you both to have the stable life I didn't give you girls. I never took risks. I never put my foot down with your dad about his drinking. I bit my lip. Why not? She dabbed at the corners of her eyes. Scared of what would happen, I guess. No matter what, I said, thinking of Greg, the sun will still rise the next day. Mary Ann scooted over so she was right next to us. You should talk to Dad if you're not happy, Mom. You can't just run from problems. Mom took a deep breath. You're right too. I'll say something. Finally. Good. I made a clucking sound, then turned to Mary Ann. That leads me to you. I need your help. She wrinkled her nose. Not more painting, please. I have a date tonight, remember? Cancel it, please. My tone was firm. I've been carrying you for years, and I really need your help this week. After you've helped me, we're going to sit down and find you another place to live. What? Why? I smiled at her. Because I want us to be close, and that's never going to happen if we continue to live together. We're too different, and for some reason you feel you can skip out on the rent? I only missed last month. Her mouth dropped, and she held up a finger. And well, maybe the month before that. Wait. Don't worry, I have a tally and you're going to pay me back. All of it, squint. I nearly laughed at the adorable pouty face she was making, but she wouldn't weasel out of her responsibilities this time. And forget the guy at the gym for now, and just go for it with Liam. He sounds like a nice guy. Stop using your one-date rule to protect yourself, and have some fun already. Who cares that it's a third date? Getting to know a guy can be good. Almond brown eyes appeared in my head, dancing and filling a hole in my heart that I hadn't even known had been there. Mary Ann tapped her finger against her cheek. Liam is awfully cute with that goatee. Is that all? My mom seemed to hold her breath. No. I smiled, shaking my head. Also, I love you both. Very much. Oh. Mom slipped her arms around us. I can handle that. And I love you girls too. Mary Ann squeezed us both, then gazed up at me. How much work will you force out of me anyway? Thinking of the little corner she'd painted last week at a snail's pace, I said, it'll seem like forever to you. Then I laughed. My family may not be perfect, but they were mine. Chapter 8. Mary Ann may not have been happy with the tasks I assigned to her, but she came through for me all week long. I mostly had her returning stuff, wide appeal items I'd no longer be using. If a client wanted neutral decor, then hiring Up to Date by Ginger Nielsen would not be the way to go. My muse still escaped me. The colorful painting I'd started for Greg's living room rested against my easel, going nowhere fast. I took my evening run on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but could no longer get into my happy zone. I couldn't clear my head. Thoughts of Greg circled my mind, as if the tiny cracks he'd caused in my protective wall had ripped wide open. It made no sense. I needed to focus on fulfilling my career dreams. I needed to amaze Jenna with this decorating project so that my life's plan would fall into place. Even though that life plan couldn't involve Greg. By Thursday evening, I'd purchased everything I needed to finish the decorating project, and the necessities were all stacked in Greg's living room. Now the fun part, putting the new items where they belonged. Mary Ann had a third date with Liam tonight, so I would fly solo tonight. I met Liam in person when he picked her up, and he seemed to adore Mary Ann. I was proud of my little sis for breaking her rules and taking a chance with a guy. A big step for her. I hiked upstairs to decorate, put the key in the lock, and was surprised when the door jerked open. I stared at Greg, blinking. Hi. Hi yourself. His smile was friendly as always, but the sparkle in his eyes that used to greet me wasn't there. I felt its absence like a knife to my chest, but tried to pretend I didn't. I double-checked my watch. I thought you would have left for work already. He leaned against the door jamb. Mary Ann told me she had a hot date tonight. That makes me your only assistant. Where should I start? What are you talking about? I eased inside, kicked off my shoes, then crossed my arms. It's Thursday. You work tonight. He shut the door, then turned to face me. This is your last night to pull everything together for the project. I know how much this means to you, so there's no way I'd abandon you. My dad had missed countless events that were important to me growing up. The emergency room always came first. Every single time. How did you get the night off? I traded shifts with another person. He shrugged. Turns out she needed a different night off for her kids' school play. His gaze cut through me. Bottom line, I'm here for you. I told you that before, and I meant it. My throat tightened. This is too much trouble for you to go through for something that is my problem. It feels like I'm taking advantage of your friendship. You're still not hearing me. He stepped forward then and did something he hadn't done since I'd called things off. He touched me. All he did was brush my shoulder briefly, but the zings that zipped through me were unstoppable. His eyes peered into mine. You don't have to do everything alone. His words stormed through me, shaking me to my core. He'd knocked down so many of my beliefs. That the stress of an emergency room doctor was too much for a person to handle. That the demanding job would leave no time for family, or a thoroughly confused downstairs neighbor, as the case may be, and that there might be a man in this world who'd be there for me, who'd believe in me. Thank you. I choked on my words. partly because I was touched, but also because a wave of sadness washed over me. Even though Greg was here for me, he wasn't mine, and I'd never felt more alone. The condo project was complete, except for the unfinished living room painting that sat on my easel, mocking me. I'd picked up my paintbrush hundreds of times, unable to swipe so much as one stroke, because every idea felt wrong. The pressure mounted inside me. If I didn't finish this painting, I'd have to use the country landscape that hung there now, which was lovely in its own way, but in no way encompassed the personality of my client or a Ginger Nielsen design. Finally, when my back throbbed from sitting cross-legged at my desk so long staring at my unfinished work, I gave in to my fatigue and eased into my bed. It was the middle of the night, but with Greg home, I didn't have to worry about the skipper being alone in his carrier. Instead, all I could think about was his owner. Greg told me he loved the final rooms of the project, but I knew in my heart something was missing, the living room painting that eluded me. My eyes were heavy, I tossed and turned, but sleep refused to come. Eventually, I climbed out of bed. Glancing at the clock, I noted the early hour as I stepped into my jogging shorts, then pulled a running shirt over my head. I tied my long hair back into a ponytail, slipped out the front door into the dark morning, and started to run. My feet pounded the pavement. I'd been unable to lose myself in my runs all week long, so I didn't even try. As my arms pumped in rhythm with my legs, my breathing followed suit, but even after several miles, no euphoric feelings greeted me. Tears burned my eyes, but I charged my legs faster and sprinted longer than ever before. All my mistakes had finally caught up to me, encompassing every cell of my being, until all forms of peace were out of my reach, along with my muse. Maybe I'd screwed up big time. Maybe I was wrong about not wanting kids, like Greg suggested. I couldn't tell what I thought or felt anymore. I just wanted to run, escape, leave everything behind. Then, suddenly, it happened. Light broke through the darkness, stretching its yellow fingers across the sky, transforming my thoughts instantly. The storm in my head receded, and the big ball of radiant yellow calmed me, healed me, and spoke to me, until only one image remained in my mind. Greg. And he smiled at me, his almond brown eyes sparkling with all of the love and hope of a new day. Pumping my legs even faster, I turned home with an uncontrollable urge to finish that painting on my easel. Because now I knew what those bright splashes across my paper had been trying to tell me, and I was finally ready to listen. When Jenna arrived on Friday afternoon, Greg's condo was the epitome of perfection. Not perfect in the sense of appealing to the bulk of Sacramento Living's readership, but perfectly representing a combination of my client and me, which was how I should have proceeded all along. Now, it didn't matter to me if Jenna liked my creation or if she'd recommend me to her friends. I'd put my soul into this project and designed something that I loved. Now I believed in my talent and in myself. Even if I had to hold down another job to pay the bills, I'd build my business one step at a time because this was my dream, and I wouldn't let anything stand in my way ever again. Greg leaned against the wall, and I stood next to him as Jenna returned from the master bedroom and surveyed the living room. Bright pillows matched the drapes. A lattice-patterned rug spread its corners under the coffee table and connected the room with coordinating hues. I'd found a wooden centerpiece that added a touch of the outdoors, and I'd tucked a large ficus tree in the corner by the sliding glass door. The new sofa and love seat were inviting. We'd mounted the TV on the corner wall, which made the big black screen still usable but less prominent. And what pulled the entire room together, of course, was the large painting of the sunrise displayed on the main wall. Sensational. Jenna snapped photos successively as she spoke. Dramatic. Exquisite. I feel like I need a thesaurus, she laughed. A deep calmness swept over me. I immediately glanced up to find almond brown eyes peering down at me. His gaze felt warm and kind, but they still didn't sparkle. When Jenna left, raving about how she was sure my business would be the next big thing in Sacramento, I turned to Greg and knew this was the end. There was no reason for me to return. I didn't need to come up to decorate. We didn't need to see each other at all. I'd say Jenna is a big fan. He reached down and swooped up the skipper, who'd been rubbing against his ankle. Greg's gaze connected with mine. How do you feel? Without him? Sad. Empty. Lonely. It took massive effort to form a smile, which I hoped didn't look as phony as it felt. I'm excited about the article. It will be fantastic exposure for founding friendships, and for my new business. I hope you got your money's worth from the auction. Beyond. His gaze darted to the painting, and his eyes darkened. That painting is priceless. I'm mesmerized by the vivid colors, the brushstrokes, everything. It's you. No, it's you, I said firmly, shaking my head. No matter what comes, you're up at dawn, ready to take on the challenge of a new day. You make life better. Me, I run at sunset, holding everything in, just waiting for the day to end. His eyes hardened. Is that how you see yourself? A rock formed in my throat, and I lifted my shoulders at the ugly truth. You're brave. I'm a coward. You're wrong. He growled, his jaw tightening, his eyes spitting fire. You donated your decorating services to your friend's auction, even though exposing your art scared you senseless. Your sister's a grown woman, but you carried the burden of her bills, so she didn't have to worry about it. You chose the career your parents wanted, turning your back on your passion, trying to make them happy. As he paused to take a breath, the rock in my throat shifted into a boulder. The heat behind my eyes boiled, threatening to spill over. You're not a coward. Far from it. He stepped toward me, his features intense and words final. You're the sunshine in everyone's life, and you can't even see it. You give to others all day long, holding back what you want until late in the evening when you finally allow yourself an hour to run. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I shook my head, hot tears seeping down my cheeks. I'm not, though. You are. His eyes steeled, unwavering. You just don't realize it yet. Every cell in my body wanted to crumple in his arms. I'd fought so hard to keep Greg from seeping into my soul, but somehow he'd snuck inside anyway. A strong woman wouldn't let this amazing man give up on his dreams of family, though. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. I have to go. I swiped at my cheeks and swallowed the lump in my throat. Thank you again for letting me decorate your place, for helping me, for everything. Then I slipped out the door, leaving my heart behind me. Past the toilet paper. Kristen held her hand out, and a big white roll dropped in her palm. She unraveled the end, then wound the tissue trail around my waist and between my legs, diapering me. Smile like a baby with gas, Ginger. We're being recorded, and we're in it to win it. Widening my stance as Kristen looped the toilet paper through, I made a face at the video camera Rach held in front of me. Happy baby shower, Ellen, but I'm not sure this is a moment I want frozen forever. Maybe Rach can go film Gina, since she won that diaper poo game by guessing all of the correct candy bars. Rach's mouth spread into a grin. One of the perks of her sweet tooth is winning a coffee shop gift card during a baby shower game. This shower is perfect, Rach. All of this time you worried for nothing. I dipped my head in Caitlin's direction, where she was rapidly diapering Ellen's grandma-in-law with way too much gusto. Even with age on our side, they were totally going to beat us, especially since Kristen moaned every time she bent over. I pointed toward the elderly lady in the fancy tissue-built diaper. Now go record a team who has a chance. But you look totally adorable, baby Ginger. Rachel giggled, then moved on with her camera. Finally. Nobody had better try to burp me after this. I stared down at the mess Kristen was creating, counting down the seconds until the timer went off. I watched her face go green as she bent over again, and I reached for her arm. Give it up, sweetie. You look like you're going to be sick. Don't say that S word again. Kristen covered her mouth with her hand, then fanned her face. I'm fine. My brows knitted when Kristen sucked in a breath and made a move to continue diapering me. I grabbed her tissue paper-filled hand. Let it go, girl. It's just a game, and not worth passing out over when we're so obviously embracing last place. You're right. She tucked the end of the toilet paper into the waistband of my pathetic excuse for a diaper. Kristen would totally need to hire a nanny with her sad skills. Then she closed her eyes, touched her belly, and her face contorted as if a wave of nausea were hitting her. Wait a minute. Staring at her hand cupping her belly, it suddenly clicked. Are you pregnant? Her eyes popped open, and she thrust her index finger over her lips. Shush, she managed, then reached for a chair to steady herself. 4 weeks. But I'm not telling everyone until 12, so this is just between us. And Ethan, of course. Oh wow. My face broke into a smile, and I clasped my hands together. Congratulations. That's so exciting. A buzzer went off across the room, then I was called for photos, and 5 of us diapered beauties said cheese for the photographer Rach had hired. Rach's apartment had been transformed into a sea of blue and white balloons, crepe paper, tablecloths, the works. For a woman who'd been stressed the last 2 weeks, she'd sure pulled off a lovely baby shower. After another shower game involving blue string and measuring Ellen's protruding belly, I finally got a moment alone with the mother-to-be. She scooped up a piece of carrot cake with cream cheese frosting, then bit into the blue wheel of a frosting baby carriage. She pushed out her bottom lip. I was sorry to hear you got laid off. Yeah, not a moment for the photo album. I dipped my fork into the moist cake, then popped a chunk in my mouth. I'm actually starting my own decorating business, though. I got my first client from Jill's charity auction. Ginger's decorating taste is top-notch. Kristen plopped down on the couch beside us. I'm going to hire her to decorate my nursery before the baby comes. Kristen's eyes bulged as she seemed to realize what had just slipped out. Ellen squealed. You're pregnant? Shush. Kristen waved her hand, then made a face like the nausea was hitting her again. We're not telling anyone yet. Although I'm having a problem keeping it a secret today. So exciting. Ellen's smile radiated at Kristen, then she turned to me. I hear Caitlin set you up with a great guy at Jill's auction. Maybe you'll be next. All kinds of pain speared through me at her words. My gaze dropped to her belly, and I realized that would never be me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Actually, I only had 1 date with Trenton. Caitlin thought he'd be right for me, but I just didn't feel it. Ellen rubbed her big baby bump. Well, you'd know if it felt right. Believe me. The first time I saw Henry, the first felt like I'd been struck by lightning. It still feels that way sometimes. Not when he leaves his dirty socks balled up on the floor of the living room, though. Kristen laughed. Ethan's pristine, thank goodness. All of our dirty clothes go in the hamper. I wanted to chime in that Greg decorated the floor of his room with his dirty clothes, discarding them haphazardly, then leaving them there to age. A few times I'd pick them up and put them in the hamper myself. But I couldn't tell them that, of course. There he goes again. Ellen rubbed her tummy. Every time I sit down to relax, it's somersault time. I might have to enroll this little guy in gymnastics. Oh. Kristen's face lit up. Can I feel? Biting my lip, I watched in fascination as Ellen pressed Kristen's hand against her belly. Kristen was normally so reserved, and it warmed my heart seeing her emotional like this. So amazing. That little life inside you, Kristen muttered. And you. Ellen smiled, then turned to me. You want to feel? Sure. I hesitated, then let her guide my hand to the left side of her belly, where she held my palm still against her silk blouse. I waited, studying the tiny rose blossoms on her shirt, but nothing happened. It was like he sensed I didn't want kids and wasn't going to perform for me. Just when I was about to pull away, a tiny force bopped against my palm. My eyes widened in surprise. Then he bumped again. Overwhelmed, my vision blurred, knowing I'd never feel that inside me. I whipped my hand away. "He's precious," I told Ellen, then made an excuse to leave the room. My eyes burned as I hurried to Rachel's bedroom, then threw the door shut. I gripped the sides of my head as the door sprang open behind me. Kristen slipped in. "What's going on?" Tears slid down my cheeks. Did Ellen notice? I don't want to ruin her shower. She shook her head. No, Rach has her opening gifts now. She's fine. What's wrong? I've made a huge mistake. I pressed the heels of my hands to my eyes, then dropped back on Rachel's bed. I'm in love with my neighbor. But it's hopeless. As soon as I said it, I immediately pictured a life with Greg. The two of us going for a run at sunset before he left for his graveyard shift. Me, in the quiet house at night painting bright, colorful works of art for my clients. A girl in the backyard, swinging a hula hoop around her waist. A boy playing hopscotch next to her, his gap-toothed smile wide, his almond eyes sparkling. I could see laughter, love, and family. Greg had been right, and I'd blown it. Kristen gave me a strange look. Why is it hopeless? Is your neighbor married? No. I scoffed, staring up at the ceiling. She sat down next to me. Is he elderly? Of course not, I sniffed, swiping underneath my eyes with the back of my hand. He's sweet and supportive and an amazing kisser. Don't ask me why I felt the need to add that last part. But he wants a big family and I thought I didn't want kids, but now? You realize you were just scared. Her mouth curved upward. Since you mentioned the kissing thing, maybe he's in love with you too. Why don't you tell him how you feel? I swallowed. He told me I could only push him away so many times before it would be too late. What if he doesn't want to be with me anymore? Kristen put a hand on my arm. Only one way to find out. That night, terrified out of my mind, I climbed upstairs to Greg's unit. This time, I wasn't going upstairs to decorate. I was going up to date, if he accepted my apology. If not, I was going up to get my heart ripped to shreds. Not a happy proposition. Holding my breath, I knocked on the door. I heard rustling inside, then moments later, the door swung open. Greg wore black shorts, a t-shirt, and his brown hair was tousled. His brows shot up as if he were shocked to see me. I wasn't sure if I should take that as a bad sign, but it sure didn't seem like a good one. I squeezed the handle of the bag I was holding, bracing myself. Hey. Hey yourself. He glanced down at the brown paper sack with a curious stare. Did you forget something? My heart squeezed. Definitely not a good sign. But he'd said I wasn't a coward, so now I had to prove that to myself. I need to talk to you. May I come in? He glanced behind him, as if he had a guest, then he turned back to me. You're the boss. Okay, that seemed like a good sign. 1 point for me. But even though I'd been trying to keep track, I wasn't sure what the score was. Setting the bag down, I decided to just open up and say what was in my heart. Here went nothing. I watched him close the door, then inhaled deeply. You said I was wrong about not wanting a family, and I didn't believe you. But I went to a baby shower today, and the future was all I could think about. For the first time in my life, I could see myself having kids, building a family. He stood very still, his body rigid. What changed? I met you. I stepped toward him and he didn't back away, so I went on. I saw my friend's excitement over starting a family with the man she loves. And for the first time, I wanted that too. I bit my bottom lip. So, I want to date you. His lips twitched. You're asking me out? Holding my breath, I nodded. Yes. I don't know. He stepped forward, the corners of his mouth curving upward. I've been rejected by you a lot. My ego's pretty fragile. How do I know you won't run from me again? The bag, I blurted, remembering I'd brought evidence of my commitment. Squatting down, I reached into the brown bag and pulled out a cardboard box with holes punched across the top. This will prove that I've changed, that I can let something and someone into my life. Now you've got me curious. He sat down next to me on the area rug, his eyes dancing as his arm brushed against mine. Show me. Mew. Mew. I opened the box and pulled out the white kitten I'd picked up from the animal shelter. Greg, I'd like to introduce you to the professor. The skipper and the professor? His eyes went wide. Okay, not the response I'd been hoping for. I lifted the soft kitty, who rubbed his nose against my palm. Don't worry, he's mine. I got him as a playmate for the skipper. You don't like him? It's not that. Mew. Mew. As if he sensed we were talking about him, the skipper pranced in, eyeing his new friend suspiciously. Then I blinked, figuring I had to be imagining things because an orange kitten trotted in behind the skipper. Mew. Looks like we had the same idea. Greg lifted the orange kitty and dropped him in my lap. I'd like you to meet Gilligan. I got him for you. Really? He's adorable. My stomach fluttered as the kitty batted his paw against my foot. Since Greg had named the kitten after the main character from Gilligan's Island, that must mean he wasn't done with me. I bit my lip, needing to know for sure. I have to tell you something else. His eyes connected with mine. You can tell me anything. I sucked in a deep breath. Remember when you told me that I take a house and make it a home by filling it with color and life? He tucked a piece of my hair behind my ear and nodded. I do. Well, that's what you do for me. I brushed my fingers across his cheek, like he'd done to me so many times. When I'm with you, it feels like I'm home. Yes, I'll date you. He cupped my face in his hands. Sunshine, you're finally seeing things clearly. Then he kissed me. Epilogue. 2 weeks later. After spending the afternoon shopping with my new client, who had been referred by Jenna McCoy, I arrived home to find my door locked. As I used my key and slid the bolt free, my mouth curved upward. My new roommate, Melinda Morgan, apparently valued safety too. It felt like the beginning of a new era. I didn't know Melinda well, but we'd both received the boot from Woodward Systems Corporation, so I figured we'd eventually bond over our shared rejection. She was working a temporary job right now, and didn't usually come home until late. So far, she'd kept to herself, giving me plenty of space to work quietly at my desk in my room. Mary Ann had moved in with her friend, and lived only 5 minutes away. She'd already stopped by to raid my refrigerator twice. Gotta love her. Seconds after I shut the front door behind me, there was a knock, knock, knock. I checked the peephole and found almond brown eyes staring back at me. I pulled the door open. Spying on me, neighbor? As often as I can. Greg brushed his lips across mine, then strode in, waving the magazine he held. Sacramento Living, hot off the press. My heart rate sped up. And? We'll find out together. He shut the door and then dropped onto the couch. He slipped his arm around me as I scooted next to him, then he proceeded to read Jenna's 6-page article highlighting founding friendships and raving about Up to Date by Ginger Nielsen. And the glossy before and after photos were phenomenal. Squeal. When Greg got to the last few lines of the flattering article, he smiled and read them aloud. In addition to Ginger's generous donation, this is what her client had to say about her. Ginger's talent transformed my home, and her heart changed my life. Working with Ginger is like opening your world up to the sunshine of endless possibilities. My eyes watered and my chest filled with joy. Greg? I started, but there were no words for what I was feeling. So, instead of trying to explain what his words meant to me, I tilted my head up and pressed my mouth to his. You're wonderful. And he was mine. Remind me to read to you more often, he joked as he closed the magazine, then squinted at the couple on the cover. Isn't this your blind date from the auction? Huh? My gaze dropped to the cover photo of Trenton Davis on the red carpet with glamorous supermodel Rochelle Richards. The headline read, Engaged. I couldn't help but smile. Trenton had finally figured out what was important. Just like I had. I knew he was still in love with her. He dropped the magazine, then twisted toward me. How was your day at work? Amazing. I smiled, colorful curtains dancing through my head. Then I remembered the phone call I'd received. I took a deep breath. My mom called this afternoon. A line formed between his brows. Don't tell me she's pushing the office jobs on you again? No. I shook my head, my throat tightening. She called to tell me that my dad checked into a rehab facility today. Not promised to go, but actually checked into a 30-day program. That's a first for him. He tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. How do you feel? I bit my lip, then glanced at the painting I'd made the last time he'd promised to go to rehab. The white swirls seemed to smile at me, and the yellow arc leapt across the sapphire blue background. But the future, who knew? I love my dad. And I'm here for him. So I'll be hopeful. Greg's brown eyes sparkled and his mouth curved up. I love you, sunshine. I love you too, I said, then kissed him with all of my heart and soul. And I knew, without a doubt, that no matter what life threw my way, the sun would rise tomorrow with the promise of a new day. The end.
This has been The Brightest Tomorrow. River City Sweethearts. Written by Susan Hatler. Narrated by Virtual Voice. Copyright 2014 by Susan Hatler. Production copyright 2026 by Susan Hatler. Susan Hatler is a New York Times best-selling author of sweet, heartfelt romances filled with humor and emotion, as well as captivating young adult novels. Her books have charmed readers worldwide and have been translated from English into German, Italian, French, Spanish, Dutch, and Portuguese. A born optimist, Susan believes life is amazing, people are fascinating, and imagination is endless. She loves spending time with her unforgettable characters and hopes that you will too.